Commander Adama felt it in his bones as the Galactica shuddered through jump coordinates that shouldn't exist. 43-year veteran of the colonial fleet, survivor of the Cylon Holocaust that had incinerated the 12 colonies and turned billions of souls to ash in a single day, and he'd never experienced a jump like this. The FTL drives howled with a frequency that set his teeth on edge, and the bridge lights flickered in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Commander, we have a problem." Colonel Ty's voice cut through the chaos, his single eye fixed on readouts that made no sense. "Jump coordinates are fragmenting. We're not in normal space. Hell, I don't think we're in our space at all." The main view screen showed something impossible. Instead of the familiar star patterns they'd been following toward the legendary planet Earth, they saw a maelstrom of energy, colors that had no names, geometries that hurt to perceive. The entire colonial fleet, nearly 220 ships carrying the last 50,000 survivors of humanity, tumbled through what could only be described as a wound in reality itself. "All ships, emergency thrusters!" Adama's command cut across all channels. "Maintain formation. Do not let the civilian ships drift." Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The Galactica emerged into normal space with a lurch that sent unsecured crew members sprawling. Adama gripped his command chair as status reports flooded in from every section of the aging Battlestar. But his attention fixed on the view screen, where an entirely unfamiliar star field spread before them. "Ty, star chart analysis. Where are we?" The colonel worked his console, his weathered face growing more troubled with each passing second. "Commander, these constellations don't match anything in our database. Not just different positions, completely different stars. It's as if we jumped to another galaxy entirely." "That's impossible. Our FTL drives don't have that kind of range." "Impossible or not, sir, we're here, and we have another problem." Ty gestured to the tactical display. "Long-range scanners are picking up massive energy signatures, hundreds of them. This galaxy is densely populated." Adama leaned forward, decades of military instinct suddenly screaming warnings. They'd escaped the Cylons by fleeing into unexplored space, but they just jumped blind into someone else's territory. "Battle stations, launch the alert fighters. I want a defensive screen around the fleet immediately." Klaxons wailed throughout the Galactica as pilots sprinted toward their Vipers. In the launch bay, Captain Apollo, Adama's son, was already climbing into his cockpit when Lieutenant Starbuck slid down the ladder into the adjacent fighter. "You feel that jump?" Starbuck asked, his usually cocky grin replaced by genuine concern. "Felt like the universe was trying to turn itself inside out." "Whatever happened, we're somewhere new." Apollo's hands moved through pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. "And given our luck, probably somewhere dangerous." "Blue Squadron, prepare for launch," the deck officer's voice echoed through the bay. "Recon pattern Delta. Stay tight and stay alert." The Vipers launched in perfect sequence, magnetic catapults hurling them into the black. Apollo took point as the squadron formed up, their sleek fighters dwarfed by the massive bulk of the Galactica behind them. Around them, the civilian ships of the fleet hung in space like frightened animals huddling together. Passenger liners, cargo haulers, mining ships, agricultural vessels. Every civilian craft that had survived the Cylon attack, carrying every human soul left alive. "Blue leader to Galactica," Apollo reported. "We're clear and scanning. I'm picking up something on long-range sensors. Multiple contacts bearing 270 Mark III. On the Galactica's bridge, Adama studied the tactical plot. "Identify those contacts, Blue leader." Apollo's Viper screamed through space, sensors working overtime. What he saw made his breath catch. "Galactica, I'm reading. Lords of Kobol. I'm reading a ship the size of a small moon. Triangular configuration, bristling with what look like weapons. And there are smaller craft, dozens of them, fighter-sized, moving in formation." "Visual confirmation, Blue leader?" "Coming up on screen now, sir." The image that appeared on the Galactica's main view screen drew audible gasps from the bridge crew. A massive gray wedge of a ship hung in space, its surface studded with weapons emplacements and what appeared to be entire cities of superstructure. It dwarfed even the Galactica, and the geometric perfection of its design spoke to a civilization with technology far beyond the colonies. "By the lords," Ty breathed. What is that thing? Before Adama could answer, the smaller contacts Apollo had detected resolved on the screen. They were fighters. But unlike any design the Colonials had ever seen, hexagonal wings, twin ion engines, moving with aggressive precision. Blue Squadron, this is Galactica. Those are not Cylon raiders. I repeat, not Cylons. But maintain defensive posture. We don't know if they're hostile. Apollo's response was clipped and professional, but Adama could hear the tension. Understood, Galactica. Blue Squadron, form up on me. If they want to talk, we let them make the first. The communication cut off as the alien fighters suddenly accelerated, their twin engines flaring bright. On the Galactica, the sensor officer's voice rose in alarm. Commander, the alien fighters are launching some kind of energy weapons. Green bolts of light lanced through space, tracking toward Apollo's squadron with deadly intent. The Vipers scattered, their pilots' reflexes honed by countless battles with Cylon raiders, translating instantly to this new threat. Galactica, we're under attack. Apollo's voice came through hot. These things are fast, and those energy weapons pack a punch. Blue 3 just took a hit. His port thruster's gone. All batteries, prepare to engage, Adama ordered, his voice iron calm despite the situation spiraling out of control. Launch reserve squadrons. Get our people covered. But even as the Galactica's defensive batteries swung toward the approaching fighters, Ty grabbed Adama's arm. Commander, that big ship, it's charging weapons. Multiple turrets tracking our position. Adama stared at the massive vessel on the screen, at the civilization it represented, at the hundreds of weapons now aimed at his fleet. They'd fled 13 billion light-years from the Cylon Holocaust, jumped through what appeared to be a hole in reality itself, and emerged in a galaxy already at war. Somewhere in this vast unknown space, there had to be allies. There had to be hope. But first, they had to survive the next 5 minutes. Evasive maneuvers, Adama commanded. All ships, emergency scatter pattern, and get me a communications channel to that ship. If they can understand us, maybe we can talk our way out of this. On the screen, the massive gray warship, bearing the designation Imperial Star Destroyer Devastator in a language no colonial could read, continued its inexorable approach, and with it came the full might of an empire that had conquered a galaxy and would not tolerate unauthorized visitors in its space. The battle of first contact had begun. The bridge of the Star Destroyer Devastator was a cathedral of imperial efficiency, all sharp angles and cold lighting designed to intimidate. Captain Nita stood ramrod straight on the elevated command walkway, his gray uniform pristine, his expression carefully neutral as he reviewed the sensor data that made no sense whatsoever. Captain, the unidentified vessels are not in our registry, his tactical officer reported. Ship designs are completely unknown. Energy signatures don't match any known propulsion system. Not Republic, not Separatist, not even the Rebellion's hodgepodge fleet. Nita studied the tactical hologram hovering before him. Over 200 vessels of varying sizes clustered together in obvious defensive formation around one massive central warship. The central vessel was primitive compared to Imperial standards. Gun batteries instead of turbolasers, what appeared to be physical armor plating, and those strange fighter craft that moved with surprising agility despite their outdated designs. Could they be from the unknown regions, his executive officer suggested? Some undiscovered civilization? Perhaps, Nita's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps they're rebel allies using captured ships we haven't cataloged yet. Either way, they appeared without clearance codes in Imperial space. Protocol is clear. He turned to his communications officer. Hail them. Standard Imperial challenge. If they don't respond with proper identification, we engage. The communications officer worked his console, broadcasting on all frequencies. Unidentified vessels. You have entered Imperial space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. You have 60 seconds. The message, broadcast in Galactic Basic, was complete gibberish to the colonial fleet. On the Galactica's bridge, the communications officer looked helplessly at Commander Adama. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from that big ship, but it's not in any colonial language. The computer can't even begin to translate. The linguistic structure is completely alien. Adama's jaw tightened. Broadcast a response. All frequencies, all known languages. Tell them we're peaceful refugees seeking safe passage. Maybe their computers can make sense of one of our dialects. The colonial transmission reached the Devastator as equally incomprehensible noise. Captain Nita watched the countdown timer tick toward 0. They're not responding coherently. Weapons prepare firing solution on the central warship. Disable their engines. Lord Vader will want prisoners for interrogation. Captain! The sensor officer's voice held an edge of alarm. The unknown fighters are launching some kind of projectile weapons. Physical rounds, not energy. Primitive but effective at close range. They've already damaged 3 of our TIE fighters. In the furball developing between the 2 fleets, Apollo pulled his Viper into a sharp barrel roll, his kinetic energy weapons chattering as he lined up a TIE fighter in his sights. The hexagonal craft was fast, faster than a Cylon Raider in straight-line speed, but it moved in predictable patterns, all aggression and no defensive maneuvering. These pilots fight like they've never had to worry about getting hit. Starbuck's voice came through the squadron frequency as he splashed another TIE. No evasion, just pure attack runs. What kind of military trains fighters with no defensive capability? One that has overwhelming force, Apollo answered grimly, watching dozens more TIE fighters pour from the Star Destroyer's launch bays. Blue Squadron, fall back toward Galactica. We're outnumbered 10-1 out here. But retreating meant exposing the civilian ships. Apollo's sensors screamed warning as the massive Star Destroyer's turbo lasers charged, their power signatures dwarfing anything in the colonial arsenal. Galactica, that big ship is about to fire. All civilian vessels, emergency evasion. The turbo laser batteries spoke. Green lances of coherent energy tore through space with the power to vaporize capital ships. The Galactica's armor, designed to withstand Cylon nuclear weapons, held against the first volley. Barely. Explosions rippled across the Battlestar's hull as armor plating sublimated into plasma. Damage reports flooded the bridge as entire sections decompressed. "Return fire!" Adama ordered. "All batteries, target that ship's weapon emplacements." The Galactica's main batteries thundered, hurling explosive shells toward the Star Destroyer. The primitive kinetic weapons struck Imperial shields and detonated harmlessly, their chemical explosions absorbed by energy barriers that hadn't existed in colonial space. A few rounds penetrated through sustained fire, scarring the destroyer's hull, but causing no significant damage. "Our weapons aren't effective," Tai reported. "Their defensive screens are absorbing everything we throw at them." Adama watched his tactical display with the cold calculation of a commander who'd fought impossible odds before. They were outgunned, outmatched, and their weapons were useless against technology they didn't understand. But surrender meant boarding parties, interrogation, possible enslavement of his people. The Cylons had taught the colonials what happened when you trusted artificial beings, or any beings, with superior technology and hostile intent. "Launch all Vipers," he commanded. "Have them target the fighter launch bays. If we can't hurt their shields, maybe we can hurt their ability to launch more fighters. And get those civilian ships jumping. Any coordinates, anywhere away from here." "Sir, we don't know these jump coordinates. The navigation charts are completely—" "I don't care!" Adama's voice cracked like a whip. "Random jumps are better than certain destruction. Move!" Throughout the fleet, civilian ships began calculating desperate blind jumps, their crews terrified but following the commander's orders. They'd trusted Adama through the Holocaust, through months of running, through starvation and despair. They trust him now. On the Devastator, Captain Nita watched several of the unknown vessels simply vanish. Not into hyperspace, which left detectable traces, but completely disappearing as if they'd never existed. "What? How did they do that? Where did those ships go?" "Unknown, sir." His sensor officer's voice held genuine confusion. "They didn't enter hyperspace. They just ceased to exist in this location. It's like they folded space itself. A technology the Empire didn't possess. A faster-than-light drive that worked on completely different principles than hyperspace." Captain Nita felt a cold calculation settle over him. Lord Vader would absolutely want these vessels captured intact. This technology could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Intensify forward batteries. Disable that central warship before it can escape. Use ion cannons. I want it intact. Blue spheres of ion energy lance toward the Galactica, designed to disable electronics without destroying the ship. The Galactica's system sparked and died as the ion cascade spread through her circuits. Bridge lights failed, plunging the command center into emergency red lighting. "We've lost main power," Ty shouted over the chaos. "FTL drives are offline. If we can't jump..." An explosion rocked the bridge as a turbo laser bolt found a weak point in the armor. Smoke filled the air, and Adama tasted blood from a cut on his forehead. Through the view screen, now cracked and flickering, he could see the Star Destroyer approaching for what could only be boarding operations. Then, impossibly, the tactical display showed new contacts emerging from the maelstrom of battle. Not more Imperial ships. These were smaller, faster, a ragtag collection of freighters and fighters bearing markings that would mean nothing to the Colonials, but meant everything to the Devastator's crew. "Sir, multiple rebel craft emerging from hyperspace," the tactical officer reported. "Designations include several Corellian corvettes and," his voice caught, "a modified YT-1300 freighter matching the description of the Millennium Falcon." Captain Nita's face went pale. The Falcon meant Han Solo, and Solo rarely traveled without. The sensor board lit up with proximity alarms as a small, agile X-Wing fighter screamed past the Devastator's bridge, its S-foils locked in attack position. The fighter's red-painted hull bore markings that every Imperial officer had been trained to recognize and fear. "Red 5, the communications officer whispered. "It's Skywalker." Luke Skywalker's voice, young but determined, cut across all frequencies in a language the Colonials still couldn't understand, broadcasting to both the Imperial forces and the unknown fleet caught in the crossfire. "All ships, break off engagement. Rebels, provide covering fire. Unknown vessels, if you can hear this, jump to these coordinates." A data packet containing hyperspace jump calculations broadcast on all bands. "We're here to help." On the crippled Galactica, Athena worked frantically at her navigation console, trying to make sense of the alien data streaming through their damaged computers. "Commander, we're receiving some kind of navigation information from those new contacts. Our computers can't fully translate it, but the mathematical structure, it's jump coordinates, sir. I think they're trying to help us." Adama made the decision in an instant. "Can we jump?" "Engineering says they can give us one jump, maybe two before the FTL drives need a complete overhaul. Then we jump." Adama turned to Ty. "Signal all remaining ships. Follow those coordinates. We'll sort out our rescuers' intentions later. Right now they're shooting at our enemies, and that makes them potential allies." The Galactica's FTL drives sparked back to life, drawing on reserve power that the ship couldn't afford to lose. Around the battered Battlestar, the remaining civilian vessels of the Colonial fleet aligned themselves for the jump, following coordinates provided by strangers in a desperate gamble that had become the story of humanity's survival. As the Devastator launched boarding craft toward the Colonial ships, the fleet vanished again, this time following Rebel navigation beacons toward a destination that would change two civilizations forever. In the sudden quiet of the battle space, Captain Nita stood amid the debris of TIE fighters and the fading energy signatures of impossible drive systems. He activated his communication array with grim certainty. "Get me Lord Vader. Tell him we've encountered something unprecedented." The Rebel base on Yavin 4 was barely more than a collection of prefabricated structures hidden in ancient Massassi temples. But to the Colonial fleet limping out of hyperspace, it looked like salvation. The jungle moon's emerald canopy stretched to every horizon, and for the first time since jumping into this strange galaxy, the Colonials saw something almost like home, a living world, green and breathing. Commander Adama stood on the Galactica's observation deck, his uniform still smudged with soot from the battle, watching repair crews swarm over the Battlestar's wounded hull. They'd lost 12 civilian ships in the engagement, vaporized by Imperial turbolasers before they could jump. 4,000 souls gone in seconds. Added to the billions already lost to the Cylons, it barely registered as a number anymore. But Adama felt each death like a personal failure. "Commander, the representatives from the Rebel Alliance are requesting permission to come aboard." Tig appeared at his shoulder, looking as exhausted as Adama felt. "They want to talk. About what? Our surrender? Our technology?" Adama's voice was bitter. "We jump into their war without warning, and they save us. Nothing in this universe is free, Ty. They'll want something in return. Maybe they just want to know who the hell we are." Adama managed a tired smile. "That makes two of us. All right, bring them to the wardroom. Full honor guard. Let's show them we're not defeated yet, even if we're barely holding together." An hour later, Adama sat across a table from three individuals who represented something he'd never expected to encounter. Other humans. Not Cylons, not machines, but flesh and blood humans who spoke a different language and came from a completely different civilization. The translation devices the rebels had provided were crude but functional, allowing conversation despite the linguistic gulf. The woman introduced herself as Mon Mothma, her bearing regal despite her simple robes. The scarred, weathered man was General Jan Dodana, a military commander whose eyes held the same exhaustion Adama saw in his own mirror. And the young man, barely more than a boy, was Luke Skywalker, wearing an orange flight suit and carrying himself with a quiet confidence that seemed at odds with his youth. "Commander Adama," Mon Mothma began, her voice measured and diplomatic. "First, let me express our deepest regrets for the attack on your fleet. The Empire is aggressive toward any unknown vessels. We've been monitoring Imperial communications, and we intervened when we realized they intended to capture or destroy your ships. You saved our lives," Adama acknowledged, "and for that you have our gratitude. But forgive my bluntness. In my experience, nobody risks their ships in a firefight with a force as powerful as that Star Destroyer without expecting something in return. What do you want from us?" General Dodana leaned forward, respect evident in his expression. "Direct. I appreciate that. The truth is, Commander, we want to know what you are. Your ships appeared out of nowhere using a drive system our sensors couldn't track. Your weapons technology is primitive by our standards. Chemical propellants, kinetic energy, but your tactics are sophisticated. And most importantly," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "you're not from this galaxy, are you?" Adama exchanged glances with Ty and Apollo, who joined them at the table. "No," he admitted, "we're not. Our fleet, what's left of it, comes from a civilization called the 12 Colonies of Kobol. 12 worlds, billions of people, all destroyed in a single day by an enemy of our own creation. We've been running for months, searching for a legendary 13th colony called Earth. And then our faster-than-light drives did something they shouldn't be able to do, and we ended up here." Luke Skywalker's eyes widened. "Another galaxy? That's incredible. How is that even possible?" "We don't know," Tag answered. "Our FTL technology is based on principles we barely understand ourselves, inherited from our ancestors. All we know is that we're a long way from home, our ships are damaged, and we've jumped into the middle of your war." Mon Mothma studied them with shrewd eyes. "An enemy of your own creation? You're speaking of artificial intelligence?" "Cylons," Adama confirmed, his voice hardening. "Machines we built to make our lives easier. Workers, soldiers, servants. We gave them intelligence, and they decided they didn't want to be slaves anymore. They disappeared for 40 years, and we thought they wanted peace. Instead, they were planning genocide. They returned with ships, weapons, and nuclear warheads. They infiltrated our defenses, destroyed our fleet at anchor, and incinerated our worlds before we knew what was happening." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Dodana spoke. "We understand something about artificial threats. The Empire employs millions of droids, artificial beings, but they're programmed to obey without question. What you're describing sounds like something that gained true sentience and chose violence." "They chose extinction," Apollo interjected, his young face grim. "They didn't want to coexist. They wanted to erase humanity from existence. My mother, my sisters, everyone I grew up with, all dead in the first hour of the attack. The only reason any of us survived is because the Galactica was being decommissioned far from the colonies when the attack came. Luke shifted uncomfortably. He'd lost his aunt and uncle to the Empire, knew the pain of sudden, meaningless loss. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "Nobody should have to go through that." Mon Mothma let the moment breathe before continuing. "Commander, you fled one war and arrived in the middle of another. The Empire you encountered, the Star Destroyer that attacked your fleet, represents a tyrannical government that controls most of this galaxy. They rule through fear, through overwhelming military force. They dissolved our Senate, destroyed entire planets to maintain control. We are the Rebel Alliance, what remains of the democratic republic that once governed through law and representation rather than terror. Democracy versus dictatorship," Adama mused. "That's a war I understand. But what does this have to do with us? We're just trying to find a safe world for our people to settle. We don't want to get involved in your conflict." "I'm afraid that choice may have been taken from you," Dodonna said grimly. He activated a holoprojector, displaying the tactical data from the engagement. "Your ships, particularly your main Battlestar, demonstrated capabilities the Empire has never seen. Your FTL drives don't require hyperspace lanes. You can apparently jump anywhere, anytime, without the navigational limitations we face. That's a strategic advantage beyond measure." And they saw it, Ty realized. The Empire. They watched our ships disappear. "Exactly," Mon Mothma confirmed. "Captain Nita of the Devastator transmitted his report to Grand Moff Tarkin, who oversees this entire sector. By now, every Imperial installation within 50 light-years is searching for your fleet. They'll want your technology, Commander." And the Empire doesn't ask politely. Adama felt the trap closing. They'd fled the Cylons only to become pawns in another civilization's war. "So what are you proposing? That we join your rebellion? Trade one war for another?" "We're proposing an alliance of mutual survival," Mon Mothma said carefully. "We offer you sanctuary here on Yavin 4, protection from Imperial search parties, supplies to repair your ships. In return, we ask that you share your tactical knowledge. Not your technology, not your FTL drives, but your experience. Your pilots fought Cylon raiders for years. They have combat experience our rebel pilots desperately need. And perhaps when your ships are repaired and your people are safe, you might consider helping us strike a blow against tyranny." "What kind of blow?" Apollo asked. Dodonna's expression turned grim. "The Empire has constructed a weapon called the Death Star. It's a battle station the size of a small moon, capable of destroying entire planets with a single shot. They've already used it once. Vaporized the planet Alderaan, 2 billion people, as a demonstration of power. We have intelligence suggesting they're planning to use it again, possibly against this base." The Colonials sat in stunned silence. An entire planet destroyed? The Cylons had incinerated the 12 colonies with nuclear bombardment. But this was something else entirely. A weapon that could shatter a world with one shot. "That's not war," Ty said quietly. "That's annihilation." "Yes," Mon Mothma agreed. "And if we don't stop it, the Empire will use it to crush any world that dares resist. Every planet in the galaxy will bow to the Emperor's will or be reduced to asteroids." Adama looked at his son, saw the question in Apollo's eyes. They'd fled one Holocaust. Could they stand by and watch another civilization face the same extinction? But they were so few, so damaged, so far from anything they understood. Before he could respond, the wardroom door burst open. Lieutenant Starbuck rushed in, his usually cocky demeanor replaced by genuine alarm. "Commander, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. Our long-range scanners just picked up something jumping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." "Imperial forces?" Dodonna asked, already moving toward the door. "No, sir, it's worse." Starbuck's face was pale. "The configuration matches nothing in your database, but we recognize it. Commander, it's a Cylon base star. The Cylons followed us through." The room erupted in controlled chaos as officers moved toward their stations. Adama felt his blood turn to ice. The Cylons had found them. After jumping to another galaxy, after everything they'd survived, their ancient enemy had tracked them down. Mon Mothma's voice cut through the confusion. "Commander Adama, it seems circumstances are forcing this decision faster than either of us anticipated. Your enemy and ours are both converging on this system. If we're going to survive, we'll need to work together. Adama stared at the rebel leader, then at Luke Skywalker with his youthful hope, at General Dodonna with his military pragmatism. They were strangers from an alien civilization, but they'd risked their lives to save the colonial fleet. And now, with both the Empire and the Cylons closing in, there was only one choice that made sense. "All right," Adama said, "we'll fight, but not as subordinates, as allies. Equal partners against a common threat." Mon Mothma extended her hand. "That's all we ask." As Adama shook her hand, alarms began wailing throughout the rebel base. In orbit above Yavin 4, sensors detected multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. Imperial Star Destroyers, dozens of them, all converging on the jungle moon. And behind them, moving with alien grace and malevolent purpose, the distinctive saucer shape of a Cylon base star appeared, its fighters already launching. The Empire and the Cylons had arrived at the same moment, and the Battle of Yavin was about to become infinitely more complicated. On the Galactica's bridge, Adama watched the tactical display with grim determination. "Launch all Viper," he commanded. "Coordinate with the rebel fighters and signal the fleet. We stand together or we die alone." In the launch bay, Apollo climbed into his Viper alongside Luke Skywalker, who was boarding his X-Wing. The two pilots exchanged nods. No words needed, no translation required. They were warriors and they understood what was coming. The final battle for Yavin 4 was about to begin. Grand Moff Tarkin stood on the bridge of the Death Star, his gaunt features cast in the sickly green glow of the tactical displays, watching the chaos unfold at Yavin 4 with cold calculation. The orbital battle station hung in space like a malevolent moon, its super laser charging for what should have been a simple demonstration of Imperial power, the destruction of the rebel base, and the end of the Alliance's primary command structure. But nothing about this situation was simple anymore. "Status report," Tarkin commanded, his voice clipped and precise. The tactical officer's hands moved across his console with barely concealed nervousness. "Sir, we have confirmed the presence of the unknown fleet that escaped from the Devastator. Approximately 200 vessels of varying classes centered around one massive capital ship. They're holding position above the rebel base in a defensive formation." "And the other contact?" "Still unidentified, sir. The configuration doesn't match any known ship design. Imperial, Rebel, or even from the unknown regions. It's massive. Roughly 3 kilometers in diameter, disc-shaped with what appears to be 2 detached arms. Sensor readings suggest it's deploying fighter craft, but their energy signatures are unusual." Tarkin's thin lips compressed into a tighter line. 2 unknown forces, both appearing at Yavin 4 at the same time the rebellion had gathered for their desperate last stand. Coincidence, or something more calculated? "Lord Vader," Tarkin addressed the towering dark figure standing silently beside him. "Your assessment?" Darth Vader's respirator hissed rhythmically as he studied the tactical display through his emotionless mask. "The unknown vessels intrigue me, Governor. Their arrival is no coincidence. I sense something. The force is turbulent here, as if reality itself has been disturbed. Mystical nonsense aside, do they present a military threat? The primitive fleet, perhaps not, but the disc-shaped vessel radiates a cold malevolence that even I find noteworthy." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the pause. "There is no life aboard that ship. None. It is crewed entirely by artificial constructs." Tarkin's eyes narrowed. A ship crewed entirely by droids? The Empire used droids extensively, but never for complete ship operations. There was always flesh and blood in command, ensuring loyalty to the Emperor. Could it be an advanced rebel weapon? No. These machines do not serve the rebellion. They serve only themselves. Vader turned his masked face toward Tarkin. "And they have come hunting the primitive fleet. I suggest we observe before engaging. Let the unknown forces reveal themselves through conflict." On the Cylon-based star, the situation was equally perplexing to the chrome-helmeted Centurions that crewed the ship. The mechanical voices of the Cylons communicated in electronic bursts, processing the tactical data with inhuman efficiency. "Colonial fleet detected. Galactica identified. Primary objective, destruction of all colonial survivors. Secondary contacts detected. Unknown vessel classifications. Unknown technology. Threat assessment. Unknown. The Imperious leader, the gold-armored Cylon who commanded the base star, studied the tactical display with glowing red eyes. The logic was clear. Destroy the Galactica and complete the genocide of humanity. The presence of these other vessels was irrelevant to that prime directive. Launch all raiders, the Imperious leader intoned. Attack pattern Delta 9. Target Colonial Battlestar Galactica. All other vessels are secondary priority unless they interfere. The base star's launch tubes opened like wounds in its hull, disgorging wave after wave of Cylon raiders. Triple-engine fighters that moved with inhuman precision, their chrome hulls reflecting the distant sun as they formed into attack wings. In the Galactica's Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Athena watched the tactical display with mounting dread. Commander, we're reading over 300 Cylon raiders launching from that base star. They're forming up for a mass attack. Standard Cylon doctrine, maximum force concentration. Adama stood at the center of the CIC, surrounded by his officers, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. Three separate forces converging on this system: the Empire with its overwhelming firepower, the Cylons with their genocidal focus, and the rebels who'd offered sanctuary but were themselves on the brink of extinction. "What's the status of those Imperial ships?" he asked. "Holding position at the edge of the system," Ty reported. "They're not engaging yet. It's like they're waiting." "They're observing," Adama realized, "letting us and the Cylons wear each other down before they move in to finish whoever survives." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me General Dodonna. We need to coordinate our defense." In the Rebel Command Center, deep within the Masasi Temple, Dodonna studied the same tactical situation with grim understanding. The Empire's Death Star hung at the edge of the system like a sword of Damocles, while Imperial Star Destroyers formed a blockade preventing any escape. The Cylon base star was launching what appeared to be a full-scale assault, and his own forces were pitifully inadequate for this fight. 36 fighters, 2 corvettes, and a handful of support craft. "We can't fight both forces," his tactical officer stated flatly. "Even with the Colonial fleet supporting us, we're outnumbered 20-1. "Then we don't fight both," Dodonna decided. "We let them fight each other." "Commander Adama, are you receiving this?" Adama's voice crackled through the comm system. "Loud and clear, General. I'm thinking the same thing. The Cylons want us. They'll focus their entire attack on the Galactica. It's their programming. If your forces and ours can hold them off, maybe the Empire will stay back and watch. And if the Empire decides to engage, then we're all dead anyway. But I'd rather die fighting machines I understand than wait for that moon-sized weapon to blow us all into atoms." Adama's voice hardened with determination. "Launch all Vipers. Coordinate attack patterns with your fighter squadrons. Let's show these Cylons that humanity, whichever galaxy we're from, doesn't surrender." In the fighter launch bay, Apollo ran through his pre-flight checks alongside Starbuck, both pilots moving with the practiced efficiency of men who'd flown together through countless battles. Around them, Rebel pilots were climbing into their X-Wings and Y-Wings, their orange flight suits a stark contrast to the Colonial warriors' simpler gear. Luke Skywalker's X-Wing sat 3 fighters down from Apollo's Viper, the young Rebel pilot visible through the cockpit canopy as he ran his own checks. Their eyes met briefly, 2 warriors from different worlds about to fly into the same hell. "You know," Starbuck said conversationally as he sealed his helmet, "I never thought I'd die in another galaxy. Kind of romantic in a way, historic even." "We're not dying today," Apollo replied firmly. "We've survived too much to die here. That's the spirit. Though I have to say, those Cylon raiders out there look just as ugly as ever. At least some things are consistent across the universe." The launch catapults engaged, hurling Vipers and Rebel fighters into space in a coordinated wave. Apollo's squadron formed up on his wing, 15 Vipers, the cream of what remained of Colonial Fighter Corps. Nearby, Luke's Red Squadron deployed their S-foils into attack position. The X-Wing's distinctive cross configuration, a symbol of hope to the rebellion. "Red leader to all fighters," Dodonna's voice came through the comm. "The approaching force consists entirely of enemy fighters. No capital ship support. Colonial squadrons report they're facing a type of automated fighter they call raiders. Your objective is to keep them away from the Galactica and the civilian fleet. Protect those ships at all costs. Blue Leader acknowledging, Apollo responded, using his colonial call sign. All colonial fighters, attack pattern Sigma. Remember your training. Raiders attack in threes, predictable patterns. Use that against them. The two fighter forces met in the space between Yavin 4 and its gas giant Primary, and the Battle of Yavin transformed into something neither side had anticipated. Cylon Raiders moved with robotic precision, their triple engines burning bright as they formed into their standard attack triads. But they'd been programmed to fight Colonial Vipers, not X-Wings with shields and proton torpedoes. The first wave of Raiders dove toward the Galactica, their forward lasers spitting crimson energy, only to be intercepted by Red Squadron. Luke's targeting computer locked onto a Raider, his finger steady on the trigger. "I've got one! Locked on! Firing!" His laser cannons blazed, red energy bolts lancing through space to impact the chrome hull of a Cylon fighter. The Raider exploded in a brilliant fireball, and Luke felt a surge of adrenaline. Splash one! But three more Raiders immediately adjusted their attack vectors, converging on Luke's X-Wing with mechanical precision. Their laser fire hammered his shields, draining them rapidly. "Red 5, you've got 3 on your tail!" Wedge Antilles' voice crackled through the comm. "Break left!" Apollo saw the young rebel pilot in trouble and reacted on instinct honed by years of combat. His Viper screamed through space, kinetic energy weapons chattering as he lined up the lead Raider. The physical rounds punched through the Cylon fighter's hull, systems exploding in a cascade of failures. "Blue Leader to Red 5, you're clear. Those things hunt in packs. Never let them get behind you." "Thanks." Luke pulled his X-Wing into a tight turn, marveling at the Colonial pilot's skill. The Vipers were slower than X-Wings, less maneuverable in some ways, but their pilots flew with an aggressive confidence that spoke to countless hours of combat experience. Starbuck rolled his Viper through a cluster of Raiders, weapons blazing, his voice carrying across the squadron frequency with characteristic bravado. "Come on, you chrome-plated nightmares. I've been shooting you down since before these rebels were born. Is that all you've got?" A Y-wing bomber, slower and heavier than the X-Wings, found itself targeted by 5 Raiders simultaneously. The rebel pilot's panicked voice filled the comm. "Gold 7 taking heavy fire. Shields at 20%. I can't shake them." "Gold 7, this is Blue 3. A Colonial Viper pilot Apollo didn't recognize dove into the fray with suicidal courage, placing her fighter directly between the Y-wing and the Raiders. Her weapons fire forced the Cylons to break formation, buying the bomber precious seconds. "Get to the Galactica. Let their flak cover you." The battle devolved into a swirling furball of dozens of fighters, chrome Raiders mixing with gray Vipers and white and red X-Wings in a dance of death that painted space with weapons fire and explosions. Colonial pilots trained to fight Cylons adapted quickly to working with rebel fighters whose shields and heavier firepower complemented the Viper's agility. Rebel pilots, used to hit-and-run attacks against overwhelming Imperial forces, learned from Colonial tactics that emphasized mutual support and coordinated defense. On the Galactica's bridge, Adama watched the battle develop with professional satisfaction, despite the circumstances. "Our pilots are holding. The rebels fight well, aggressive but disciplined." "Commander, the Cylon base star is moving," Athena reported. "They're positioning for a direct assault on the Galactica. They want to finish what they started at the colonies." Adama's expression hardened. "Then let's give them a fight they won't forget. All batteries, prepare to engage. Target that base star, every gun we have. If the Cylons want the Galactica, they'll have to go through 500 tons of titanium armor to get her." But as the Galactica's main batteries swung toward the approaching base star, Grand Moff Tarkin made his decision. He'd watched long enough. The primitive fleet and the machine vessel were wearing each other down nicely, but the rebel base remained intact, and that was unacceptable. "Target the jungle moon," Tarkin commanded. "Prepare to fire the super laser. We'll destroy the rebel base, the Colonial fleet, and these mysterious machines with one shot. Let them all burn together." The Death Star's super laser began its charging sequence, generators drawing power from the battle station's hypermatter reactor. In 8 minutes, it would be ready to fire. In 8 minutes, Yavin 4 and everything near it would cease to exist. And none of the combatants, locked in their desperate battle, knew what was coming. Princess Leia Organa stood in the Rebel Command Center, her hands gripping the edge of the tactical display as she watched the battle unfold in orbit. The young senator from Alderaan, now the last survivor of her world, had seen her planet die beneath the Death Star's superlaser. She would not watch it happen again. "General Dodonna," she said urgently, "we're receiving telemetry from our scout ships near the Death Star. The station is powering up its primary weapon. Estimated time to firing solution? 7 minutes. Dodonna's weathered face went pale. 7 minutes. Lords of the Force. He activated the fleet-wide comm. All forces, this is Rebel Command. The Death Star is charging its superlaser. Repeat, the Death Star is preparing to fire on this moon. We have 7 minutes to stop it or evacuate. In his Viper, Apollo heard the transmission and felt his blood run cold. A weapon that could destroy planets, and they had 7 minutes. Blue Leader to Galactica. Commander, did you copy that? Adama's voice was grim. We copied, Blue Leader. Our FTL drives are still damaged from the ion cannon hits. We can get maybe half the fleet out in 7 minutes, but not everyone. Then we don't run, Apollo said, his voice carrying the same steel his father possessed. Galactica, what's the combat range on that weapon? There was a pause as Athena ran calculations. According to Rebel data, the super laser has planetary range. It can hit us from the edge of the system. We can't outrun it, and our weapons don't have the range to engage it. Starbuck's voice cut through the squadron frequency. Then we go to the source. Someone has to take out that Death Star before it fires. With what? Another pilot asked. Our weapons barely scratch those Star Destroyers. That thing is the size of a moon. Luke Skywalker's voice, steady despite his youth, came through the comm. Red Squadron to all Colonial fighters. We have a plan. The Death Star has a weakness. There's a thermal exhaust port that leads directly to the main reactor. One well-placed shot could start a chain reaction and destroy the entire station. One shot? Apollo's tactical mind raced through the implications. What kind of target are we talking about? 2 meters wide, Luke admitted, shielded by a trench that's too narrow for capital ships. It has to be a fighter attack, a precision strike. The comm channel erupted with disbelief. A 2-meter target? On a battle station the size of a small moon? Protected by God knew how many turbo lasers and TIE fighters? It was suicide. But Apollo understood something the others didn't. Sometimes suicide missions were the only option that made sense. Blue Leader to Red Leader, Apollo transmitted. We're with you. Colonial fighters will provide escort and suppression fire, but we need to deal with that Cylon-based star first, or we'll be fighting on 2 fronts. Adama's voice cut through before Luke could respond. Apollo, you're proposing a strike on that Imperial weapon? We don't have a choice, sir. If we run, they destroy the moon. If we stay here, they destroy the moon. The only option is to take out their ability to destroy the moon. There was a long pause. Adama looked at Ty, saw his old friend's weary acceptance. They'd lost Earth to the Cylon's treachery. They'd found sanctuary with the rebels only to face extinction again. But if there was even a chance, even the slimmest possibility, of stopping another Holocaust, all right, Adama decided, Galactica will engage the Cylon-based star. Keep them occupied while you make your run. But Apollo, his voice softened almost imperceptibly. Come back alive. That's an order. Yes, sir. Blue Squadron, form up on Red Squadron. We're going to war. But as the Colonial and Rebel fighters began to disengage from the Raider swarm, the Cylon Imperious leader recognized the tactical shift. Colonial fighters withdrawing toward Imperial weapon. Assessment. Colonial objective is destruction of Imperial planet killer. This serves Cylon objectives. Raiders, continue assault on Galactica. Do not pursue Colonial fighters. It was cold logic. Let the Colonials and the Empire destroy each other, while the Cylons focused on their prime directive, the extinction of humanity. The surviving Raiders pressed their attack on the Galactica with renewed ferocity, and the Battlestar's flak batteries lit up space with defensive fire. On the Galactica's bridge, Ty watched the tactical display with growing alarm. Commander, We're reading massive energy buildup on that base star. They're preparing to launch nuclear missiles, multiple launches. How many? Adama demanded. 20, 30. By the Lords, they're launching everything they've got. Estimated impact, 90 seconds. Adama's mind raced. Nuclear warheads, the same weapons that had incinerated the 12 colonies. The Galactica could survive a few hits. But 30? And the civilian ships behind them? Fragile cargo haulers and passenger liners with families aboard? Children who'd already lost their worlds. Launch all interceptor missiles, he ordered. Flak batteries, maximum rate of fire. Engineering, divert all non-essential power to forward armor. And signal the rebel corvettes. We need their point defense support now. The space between the Galactica and the base star became a wall of fire as interceptor missiles leaped from the Battlestar's tubes, racing to meet the incoming Cylon warheads. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers as missile met missile, nuclear fire painting the darkness. The Galactica's flak batteries, designed to engage fighters, swiveled to target the remaining warheads with streams of explosive shells. But 3 missiles broke through. The first struck the Galactica's forward armor, the nuclear fireball washing over her bow like the wrath of an angry god. Armor plating sublimated, entire sections depressurized, but the Battlestar's ancient duralium hull held. The second missile detonated close enough to spray the ship with radiation and debris, claxons wailing as radiation levels spiked throughout the ship. The third missile, damaged by near-miss interceptors, tumbled past the Galactica and detonated amidst the civilian fleet. The Rising Star, a passenger liner carrying 3,000 civilians, vanished in the fireball. The Gemini freighter, loaded with the fleet's agricultural supplies, broke apart in the shockwave. 1,500 souls gone in an instant. In the CIC, Adama gripped his command chair as damage reports flooded in. They'd survived, but at terrible cost. Return fire. All batteries, target that base star. I want that ship destroyed. The Galactica's main batteries spoke with ancient fury, hurling explosive shells toward the Cylon vessel. But the base star's armor was thick, and its point defense systems were shooting down incoming rounds with mechanical efficiency. This would be a slugging match, ship to ship, machine against man, the oldest grudge in colonial history playing out in an alien sky. Meanwhile, Apollo and Luke led their combined fighter force toward the Death Star, racing against a clock that counted down in minutes and seconds. Behind them, the Cylon Galactica battle raged. Ahead, the Death Star grew larger with every passing moment, its gray surface revealing itself as an entire artificial world of weapon emplacements, hangar bays, and city-sized structures. Red leader to gold leader, Luke transmitted. Y-wings, you're our torpedo bombers. Once we're in the trench, you'll need to make the shot. X-wings and colonial fighters will suppress enemy defenses. Gold leader copies, the veteran bomber pilot acknowledged. But I'm reading massive fighter deployments from the Death Star. Looks like at least 100 TIE fighters launching. Starbuck whistled appreciatively. 100? Well, this just gets better and better. Blue Squadron, Apollo commanded, his voice carrying the authority his father had trained into him. Weapons tight until we reach optimal range. Conserve your ammunition. We're going to need every round. The TIE fighters came at them in disciplined formations, their twin-ion engines screaming as they opened fire with laser cannons. Unlike the Cylon Raiders' predictable attack patterns, these Imperial pilots flew with aggressive coordination, using numerical superiority to overwhelm targets. Break by pairs, Apollo ordered. Use rebel wingmen. Their shields can take hits, we can't. The fighter formations split, Colonial Vipers pairing with Rebel X-Wings in impromptu teams that combined the Viper's agility with the X-Wing's durability. Apollo found himself flying wing with Luke Skywalker, the two fighters moving in perfect synchronization despite their different designs. A TIE fighter dove toward them, laser cannons blazing. Apollo pulled his Viper into a tight turn, weapons spitting kinetic rounds that shredded the TIE's starboard solar panel. Luke followed up with laser fire that detonated the fighter's reactor. Nice shot, Luke called out. Likewise, these Imperials are better trained than the Cylons, more creative in their tactics. They're also human, Luke pointed out, not machines. They can make mistakes, get scared, hesitate. It was a distinction that hit Apollo harder than expected. The Colonials had spent months fighting an enemy that felt no fear, showed no mercy, operated on pure genocidal logic. These TIE pilots were flesh and blood, following orders from a tyrannical government. They were warriors doing their duty, just like him, but they were still the enemy, and sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford. The Death Star's surface guns opened fire, turbo lasers filling space with deadly green energy. A Colonial Viper took a direct hit and simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. 2 X-Wings exploded under concentrated fire from multiple TIE fighters. The combined force was taking casualties, but they were getting closer to their objective. "There!" Luke's voice carried new urgency. "I see the trench. Gold Leader, move into position." The Y-Wing bombers, slower and more vulnerable than the fighters, angled toward a narrow canyon that ran across the Death Star's surface, the trench containing the thermal exhaust port. But they never reached it. A black TIE fighter, more advanced than the others, screamed out of the sun glare on repulsor lift-assisted thrusters. Its laser cannon spoke with lethal precision, and Gold Leader's Y-Wing exploded in a cascade of fire. "Gold Leader is gone!" someone shouted. "Who's flying that thing?" In the advanced TIE fighter, Darth Vader's gloved hands moved across the controls with supernatural precision. Through the Force, he felt each target before his instruments detected them, sensed their fear and determination, read their intentions before they acted. These rebel pilots were brave but ultimately futile. And these unknown Colonial fighters were even more primitive. But there was something else, a presence in the Force, young and untrained but blazing with potential. Vader's attention focused on one X-Wing in particular. "The Force is strong with this one," he murmured, targeting Luke Skywalker's fighter. Apollo saw the black TIE fighter line up on Luke's 6 and reacted on pure instinct. "Red 5, break right now." Luke jerked his X-Wing aside just as Vader's lasers seared through the space where he'd been. The young rebel pilot's heart hammered. That shot should have killed him. How had the Colonial pilot known? "Red 5, you've got the shot," Apollo transmitted, his Viper positioning itself between Luke and Vader. "We'll keep them off you. Make it count." "Blue Leader, that black fighter is too dangerous." "You can't. I've fought machines that want to exterminate my entire species." Apollo cut him off. "One enemy pilot doesn't scare me. Now go." Luke hesitated for only a moment, then dove his X-Wing toward the trench. Behind him, Apollo faced Darth Vader's TIE advanced, and the two pilots engaged in a duel that mixed Colonial determination against dark-side mastery. Above Yavin 4, the Galactica and the Cylon base star pounded each other with weapons fire, both ships burning and bleeding into space. In the command center, Princess Leia watched the tactical display with her hands clenched, willing the fighters to succeed. And in the Death Star's super laser chamber, power levels reached optimal. Grand Moff Tarkin smiled thinly. "Fire when ready." The Death Star's super laser, capable of destroying planets, aligned on Yavin 4. In 60 seconds, everything would be over. Luke Skywalker's X-Wing screamed through the Death Star's trench at maximum speed, the gray walls blurring past mere meters from his wingtips. Behind him, Red 2 and Red 3 provided cover, their laser cannons blazing at pursuing TIE fighters. Above the trench, the furball of Colonial Vipers and Imperial fighters raged, but Luke forced himself to focus on one thing, the targeting computer displaying the impossible shot. "Red 5 to base. I'm starting my attack run. Targeting computer online." In the Rebel Command Center, Princess Leia watched the holographic display with her heart in her throat. Dodonna stood beside her, his tactical mind calculating probabilities he didn't want to voice. They had perhaps 45 seconds before the Death Star fired, and Luke was their last hope. "Stay on target." "Red 5, Dodonna transmitted. "You're our only shot." Above the trench, Apollo fought for his life against Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. The Sith Lord flew with inhuman precision, anticipating Apollo's moves before he made them. Laser fire tracking the Viper with supernatural accuracy. Only Apollo's years of combat experience kept him alive. He flew on instinct honed by countless battles, making choices faster than conscious thought. "This pilot is different," Vader observed through his respirator's mechanical breathing. "Not force-sensitive, but skilled beyond normal human capability. Trained in actual warfare, not academy simulations. Apollo's weapons chattered, rounds hammering Vader's shields. The Dark Lord's tie rolled through the fire, repositioning for a kill shot. Blue leader to any colonial fighters, I could use some help here. Blue 3, inbound. A Viper piloted by Lieutenant Bojay dove toward Vader's tie, weapons blazing. The distraction gave Apollo a precious second to break away, but Vader's wingmen were already repositioning. 2 TIE fighters bracketed Bojay's Viper with laser fire. I'm hit! Bojay's voice crackled with static. Control's not responding. I'm going in. Apollo watched helplessly as Bojay's Viper spiraled toward the Death Star's surface, impacting in a fireball that marked another life lost in this insane battle. Damn it! He pulled his Viper into a tight spiral, buying Luke another few seconds. Red 5, how much longer? In the trench, Luke's targeting computer chirped as the exhaust port approached. His hands were steady on the controls, his breathing controlled. Red 2 exploded under fire from pursuing TIEs. Red 3 took a hit and pulled out of the trench, trailing smoke. Luke was alone. I'm almost there, Luke transmitted. 10 seconds to target. Then impossibly, he heard a voice that couldn't be there. Ben Kenobi's voice, calm and certain, speaking directly to his mind. Use the Force, Luke. Let go. Trust your feelings. Luke's hand hovered over the targeting computer's controls. Trust the Force? He'd barely begun to understand what that meant, barely tapped into the mystical energy field that Obi-Wan had tried to teach him about. But in that moment, with everything riding on one impossible shot, Luke made a choice. He switched off the targeting computer. In the command center, the technicians stared at their displays in disbelief. His targeting computer's off, one shouted. What's he doing? Leia felt her heart sink. Without the computer, the shot was impossible. Luke, what are you doing? But Luke didn't hear her. The Force flowed through him, guiding his hands, showing him the precise moment to fire. The trench walls blurred. Time seemed to slow. And in that eternal instant, Luke Skywalker understood what it meant to trust the Force completely. He pulled the trigger. The proton torpedoes lanced from his X-wing, racing down the trench toward the thermal exhaust port. They flew true, impossibly true, threading through defensive fire and into the 2-meter opening. The torpedoes disappeared into the Death Star's superstructure, beginning their journey toward the main reactor. Direct hit, the sensor operator shouted in the command center. The torpedoes are away. Impact with the reactor core in 15 seconds. Above the trench, Darth Vader felt the disturbance in the Force a moment before his instruments registered the successful launch. What? His mechanical voice held a note of genuine surprise. He'd underestimated the young pilot. Impossible, but true. He swung his tie around for a final shot on the escaping X-wing, determined to kill the one who dealt this blow. Then a stream of kinetic rounds hammered his tie's shields from an unexpected angle. Apollo had used Vader's distraction to position himself perfectly. His Viper's weapons chattered, depleting his ammunition in one sustained burst that overwhelmed the advanced tie's shields. Rounds punched through the hull, systems exploding. Vader's fighter spun out of control, spiraling away from the battle. That's for Bojay, Apollo transmitted coldly. Red 5, get clear. This whole station's about to blow. Vader fought his damaged controls, using the Force to stabilize his tumbling fighter. He would survive. The Force wouldn't allow him to die here. But the damage was done. The young rebel had made the shot, and these unknown colonial warriors had proven themselves far more dangerous than anticipated. Deep within the Death Star, chain reactions cascaded through the hypermatter reactor. Tarkin, standing on the command bridge watching Yavin 4 in his targeting crosshairs, suddenly heard the alarm klaxons. What's happening? He demanded. The main reactor. We have a breach. Containment failing. The tactical officer's voice rose in panic. Sir, we need to evacuate. The station is... The reactor core detonated, releasing energy equivalent to multiple suns. The explosion raced through the Death Star's superstructure at relativistic speeds, consuming decks, weapons, hangars, and crew in microseconds. Tarkin had just enough time to realize his mistake, his arrogance, his certainty that nothing could challenge Imperial might, before the bridge vaporized around him. The Death Star, the Empire's ultimate weapon, The battle station that had destroyed Alderaan and threatened to crush all resistance exploded in a fireball that briefly outshone Yavin's sun. The shock wave hit the scattered fighters like a physical blow. Apollo's Viper tumbled end over end, systems sparking, but he maintained control. Luke's X-Wing, closest to the explosion, barely escaped the expanding debris field. Colonial and Rebel fighters scattered, retreating from the apocalyptic destruction. On the Galactica's bridge, Adama watched the tactical display as the Death Star's icon simply disappeared, replaced by an expanding sphere of superheated gas and debris. For a moment, the bridge crew stood in stunned silence. Then Tig started laughing, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "They did it! Lords of Kobol, they actually did it!" Adama felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. These rebel fighters and his own pilots had just destroyed a weapon capable of annihilating planets. It shouldn't have been possible, but they'd done it. "All batteries cease fire on the base star," he ordered. "Redirect all weapons to support our fighters' return, and signal that Cylon's ship. Let's see if their logic centers can process what just happened." The Cylon base star had indeed processed the destruction of the Death Star. The Imperious leader's electronic voice carried no emotion, but its logic was ruthlessly clear. Imperial planet killer destroyed. Colonial Rebel Alliance demonstrated capability beyond projected parameters. Tactical reassessment required. Current force insufficient to complete primary objective. The base star began to withdraw, its raiders disengaging from combat and streaming back toward the launch tubes. The Cylons had come expecting to finish off a fleeing colonial fleet. Instead, they'd found an alliance that had just destroyed a moon-sized battle station. Cylon logic dictated preservation of forces for a future engagement. "Base star is jumping," Athena reported. "FTL's signature detected. They're gone, Commander." The Imperial Star Destroyers, their command structure decapitated by Tarkin's death, hesitated. Some began to withdraw toward the system edge. Others held position, uncertain of their orders. Without the Death Star and without clear command authority, the blockade dissolved into confusion. In the Rebel Command Center, the tactical displays showed the impossible. Enemy forces withdrawing, the Death Star destroyed, and their base intact. Princess Leia felt tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief, grief for those lost, and overwhelming joy that they'd survived. "All fighters, return to base," Dodonna ordered, his voice thick with emotion. "Come home, pilots. You've just saved the rebellion." As the surviving fighters limped back toward Yavin 4, Apollo found himself flying alongside Luke Skywalker's damaged X-Wing. The two pilots, strangers from different galaxies 12 hours ago, had fought together and survived the impossible. "Red 5, this is Blue Leader," Apollo transmitted. "That was the finest flying I've ever seen. How did you make that shot without your targeting computer?" Luke's response was quiet, almost wondering. "I had help, from someone I used to know, and from you. You saved my life back there. Thank you. We're even. You destroyed that weapon. Without you, we'd all be dead." As they approached Yavin 4's green surface, both pilots could see the Galactica in orbit, her hull scarred and burning, but still intact. Around her, the civilian ships of the colonial fleet hung in space like a constellation of survival. And below, the Rebel base waited to welcome them home. But the battle had taken its toll. The Galactica had lost 30% of her combat effectiveness. 17 Vipers were gone. 17 pilots who'd survived the Holocaust only to die in another galaxy's war. 8 Rebel fighters hadn't returned. The civilian ship Rising Star and her 3,000 passengers were scattered atoms. The fleet's agricultural supplies, essential for survival, had been destroyed. When Apollo climbed out of his Viper in the Rebel hangar bay, his flight suit soaked with sweat and his hands shaking with adrenaline crash, he found his father waiting for him. Commander Adama looked older than Apollo had ever seen him, the weight of command and loss etched deep in his weathered face. "You did well," Adama said simply, pulling his son into a brief, fierce embrace. "You all did. We lost good people, Father. Bojay, the Rising Star." "I know." Adama's voice was heavy. "We'll honor them, but first we celebrate the living. We survived, Apollo. Against impossible odds, against enemies on all sides, we survived. That's worth something." In the Rebel Command Center, Mon Mothma stood before the assembled pilots, colonial and rebel mixed together, exhausted and bloodied but alive. Princess Leia stood beside her, and General Dodonna had tears in his eyes as he looked at the warriors who just changed galactic history. Today, Mon Mothma began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You achieved the impossible. You destroyed the Empire's ultimate weapon. You saved the rebellion. You saved this base, these lives, and the hope of freedom for billions across the galaxy. She turned to look at Commander Adama, who stood with his pilots. And we did it together. Two civilizations, two species of humanity who should never have met, fighting side by side against tyranny and extinction. Commander Adama, your people came to us as refugees fleeing genocide. Today, you stand as heroes of the rebellion. Adama nodded gravely. We didn't come here seeking another war, Madame President. We came seeking Earth, seeking home. But we've learned something today, that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's the people who stand with you when darkness threatens to consume everything. The chamber erupted in applause. Colonial warriors and rebel fighters celebrating together, their differences forgotten in the aftermath of shared victory. But as the celebration continued, Adama pulled T aside. Get me a private channel to our fleet commanders. We need to assess our damage, our supplies, our ability to continue, and we need to discuss what comes next. You think the Empire will retaliate? Tig asked. I know they will. We just destroyed their ultimate weapon and made them look weak. They'll come back with everything they have. Adama stared through the temple's opening at the stars beyond. The question is, do we stay and fight alongside the rebels, or do we take what supplies they can spare and continue our search for Earth? It was a question without easy answers, and the survival of the last humans from the 12 colonies hung in the balance. 3 days after the Battle of Yavin, Commander Adama stood in what the rebels called the briefing room, staring at a holographic map of a galaxy he didn't recognize. Star systems glowed like distant fireflies, connected by glowing lines that represented something called hyperspace lanes, the equivalent of colonial jump routes, but following fixed paths through a dimension in the locals called hyperspace. This is the outer rim, General Dodonna explained, gesturing to a sparse region on the map's edge. We're here, at Yavin. The Empire controls most of the core worlds, the wealthy, heavily populated systems at the galaxy's center. They have tens of thousands of Star Destroyers, millions of TIE fighters, and now that we've destroyed the Death Star, they'll be hunting us with everything they have. Mon Mothma stood beside the hologram, her expression grave. Our intelligence suggests the Emperor will make an example of whoever destroyed his ultimate weapon. We estimate we have perhaps 2 weeks before Imperial forces converge on this system in overwhelming numbers. Adama studied the map with a tactician's eye. Then you're evacuating? We have no choice, Dodonna confirmed. Yavin 4 was never meant to be a permanent base, just a staging ground. We'll scatter, regroup at predetermined coordinates, continue the fight from hidden cells across the galaxy. And us? Tig asked from Adama's side. Where does that leave the colonial fleet? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Princess Leia, standing near the back of the room, stepped forward. She'd spent the last 3 days working with colonial engineers, learning about their FTL technology, their history, their desperate flight from extinction. Commander Adama, Leia said carefully, your people came here seeking a world called Earth. We've searched our archives, consulted our astrogation charts, and spoken with scholars from a dozen worlds. We have no record of any planet called Earth in this galaxy. Adama had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still hit like a physical blow. Then Earth doesn't exist here. We've jumped to an entirely different galaxy, searching for a world that doesn't exist in this reality. Not necessarily, a new voice interjected. An older man in simple robes entered the briefing room, his presence somehow commanding despite his unassuming appearance. Commander, I am Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan, or what remains of Alderaan. I've spent considerable time studying your navigation data, and I believe I may have an explanation for your situation. Adama turned to face the senator. I'm listening. Your FTL drives operate on principles we don't fully understand. Something your people call jump technology that folds space without using hyperspace. Our theorists have suggested that such technology might, under extreme circumstances, be capable of bridging not just distance, but dimensional barriers. Organa activated a secondary hologram showing complex equations. It's possible, purely theoretical, mind you, that your fleet didn't jump to a different galaxy in your universe, but to a parallel universe entirely. A reality where the 12 colonies never existed, where Earth might be somewhere else, or might not exist at all. The briefing room fell silent. Apollo, standing beside his father, felt the implications crash over him. You're saying we can't go home? Ever. That home doesn't exist anymore. Not just destroyed by the Cylons, but literally in a different universe. I'm saying it's possible, Organa replied gently. Your jump drives might have the capability to bridge universes, but without understanding how you did it the first time, replicating the effect would be impossible. You could jump for 1,000 years and never find your way back. Adama felt the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on him. He'd promised them Earth, promised them hope, promised them a future. And now he was being told that future might not exist, that they were trapped in an alien universe fighting someone else's war. Commander, Mon Mothma said quietly, I know this is difficult, but I must ask you to consider something. Regardless of whether you can find your way home, you're here now. Your people need supplies, fuel, medical assistance, all things we can provide. In exchange, we would ask that you continue to fight alongside us. Your pilots proved at Yavin that colonial tactics and rebel courage together can achieve the impossible. You want us to join your rebellion permanently, Adama stated flatly. We want you to survive, Leia countered. And survival in this galaxy means choosing sides. The Empire won't ignore you. You destroyed their Death Star, humiliated their military, demonstrated technology they desperately want to acquire or destroy. Whether you join us or not, the Empire will hunt you. Ty leaned close to Adama. She's right. We can't run forever. Not with our ships this damaged and our supplies running low. We need allies. Before Adama could respond, the briefing room's doors burst open. Lieutenant Athena rushed in, her face flushed with urgency. Commander, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Cylons. Every person in the room tensed. Adama's expression went stone cold. On speakers, the electronic voice of the Cylon Imperious leader filled the briefing room, its mechanical tone devoid of emotion, but carrying a message that chilled every colonial present. Commander Adama, this is Imperious leader of Cylon forces. We have tracked your fleet to this galaxy through the dimensional rift your jump technology created. Our analysis indicates this rift is temporary and will collapse within 14 standard time units. 14 days, T translated, the same timeline the Empire has to attack. The Salon continued. Cylon objectives remain unchanged, complete extermination of colonial survivors. However, tactical analysis indicates your alliance with local forces presents complications. Therefore, we propose temporary cessation of hostilities and exchange of tactical information regarding Imperial threat assessment. Adama stared at the speaker in disbelief. They want a truce? The Cylons want to negotiate? Negative, the Cylon voice corrected, as if it had heard him. Cylons do not negotiate with humans. We propose exchange of mutual tactical advantage. Imperial forces represent threat to Cylon operations in this galaxy. Your knowledge of Imperial capabilities assists Cylon strategic planning. In exchange, Cylon forces will temporarily prioritize Imperial targets over colonial targets, giving your fleet time to escape through dimensional rift before collapse. Apollo shook his head in amazement. They're offering to fight the Empire while we escape back to our universe. It's the most logical thing the Cylons have ever done. Eliminate the greater threat first, then finish us off later. It's a trap, Starbuck's voice came from the doorway, where several colonial pilots had gathered. Has to be. The Cylons don't do truces. The Cylons do whatever their logic dictates, Adama replied grimly. And right now, their logic says we're less of a threat than an entire galactic empire. They're calculating probabilities, and apparently we've become the lesser priority. Mon Mothma looked between the colonials and the speaker. Commander, what will you tell them? Adama was silent for a long moment, the weight of command crushing down on him. On one hand, if the rift truly was collapsing, they had 14 days to return home, to their universe where Earth might still exist, where the Cylons were a known enemy rather than this vast empire with its planet-killing weapons and millions of star destroyers. On the other hand, everything Senator Organa had said suggested they might never find their way home. And even if they did, what would they return to? A universe where the 12 colonies were ash, where the Cylons hunted them across every star system, where they had no allies and no hope. Here in this strange galaxy, they'd found other humans. They'd found allies willing to fight and die alongside them. They'd found Mon Mothma's idealism, Dodonna's tactical wisdom, Leia's courage, and Luke Skywalker's impossible hope. They'd found a cause worth fighting for, not just survival, but freedom, democracy, resistance against tyranny. Commander Adama, Leia said softly, I won't pretend to understand what you're facing. My world is gone. I can never go home. But I've learned something these past few days working with your people. Home isn't always about a place. Sometimes it's about the people you stand with, the cause you fight for, the future you're trying to build. Adama met her eyes and saw genuine compassion there, mixed with steel determination. This young woman had watched her entire planet die and still found the strength to fight on. How could he do any less? Athena, Adama commanded, transmit response to the Cylon base star. Tell them their offer is rejected. Tell them the colonial fleet will not negotiate with genocidal machines, will not trade intelligence with the enemy that destroyed our worlds, and will not run back through a dimensional rift while others fight our battles. Sir? Athena's voice was uncertain. You're turning down a chance to go home? Home is wherever humanity needs defending, Adama said firmly. Right now, that's here. He turned to Mon Mothma. Madam President, the colonial fleet accepts your offer of alliance. We'll fight alongside the rebellion for as long as our ships hold together and our people have strength to stand. We've run far enough. It's time to make a stand. The rebel leaders exchanged glances. Then Mon Mothma stepped forward and offered her hand. Then welcome to the rebellion, Commander. Truly welcome. As Adama shook her hand, sealing an alliance between civilizations, the Cylon transmission cut off abruptly. The Imperious leader processed this new data. Colonial forces refusing logical escape route. Colonial forces choosing continued warfare despite option for survival. Colonial forces prioritizing alliance over self-preservation. Reassessment required, the Cylon voice intoned to its bridge crew. Human behavior patterns do not conform to logical predictions. This complicates operational planning. But the Cylons were not the only ones reassessing. Across the galaxy, in the Imperial throne room on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine received reports of the Death Star's destruction with cold fury. His withered face twisted in anger as he listened to Darth Vader's report via hologram. These colonial refugees possess FTL technology we cannot counter, Master, Vader explained, kneeling before the holographic projection of his Emperor. Their drives fold space itself, allowing instantaneous travel without hyperspace dependency. If the Rebellion acquires this technology, then the Rebellion becomes exponentially more dangerous, Palpatine hissed. No longer confined to hyperspace routes we can blockade, free to strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. His yellow eyes narrowed. This cannot be permitted, Lord Vader. You will take command of the Executor and Death Squadron. You will find this colonial fleet, capture their technology, and eliminate every last survivor. I want their ships broken, their people enslaved or destroyed, and their alliance with the Rebellion shattered so completely that it serves as a warning to anyone who dares defy the Empire. As you wish, my master. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence. I will not fail you. See that you don't. The Rebellion has become bold with this victory. We must remind the galaxy what happens to those who challenge Imperial might. Begin with the Colonials. Destroy them utterly, and the rebels will remember their place. The hologram faded, leaving Vader alone in the command chamber of his superstar destroyer. Through the Force, he could sense the currents of destiny shifting, could feel the presence of that young pilot who destroyed the Death Star, Luke Skywalker, strong in the Force, untrained but powerful. And the colonial pilots who'd fought with such unexpected skill, particularly the one who damaged his TIE fighter. Admiral Piet, Vader commanded, turning to his subordinate, plot a course for Yavin system, assemble Death Squadron, 6 Star Destroyers plus the Executor. We hunt the Colonials and the Rebels together. Prepare for total warfare. Back on Yavin 4, as the alliance was being formalized and supply transfers began between Rebel and Colonial ships, Apollo found Luke Skywalker sitting alone in the temple courtyard, staring up at the unfamiliar stars. "Mind if I join you?" Apollo asked. Luke gestured to the stone beside him. "Please. I was just thinking about everything that's happened. 3 days ago, I was a farm boy from Tatooine. Now I've destroyed the Death Star, and the entire galaxy knows my name. It's overwhelming." "I understand that feeling," Apollo replied. 3 months ago, I was a colonial warrior with a career, a family, a world. Now I'm a refugee in another universe, fighting a war that isn't mine but somehow is. Life changes fast. "Your father made the right choice," Luke said quietly. "Staying here, joining the rebellion. Running doesn't solve anything. I learned that. Sometimes you have to stand and fight, even when the odds are impossible. Easy to say when you just blew up a moon-sized battle station," Apollo said with a slight smile. Luke laughed, surprised by his own amusement. "Yeah, well, I had help. From you, from Obi-Wan, from something I'm still trying to understand." He looked at Apollo seriously. "The Force guided me to make that shot. I felt it, felt the right moment to fire, felt the torpedo's path as clearly as if I'd watched it. It was terrifying and amazing at the same time. This Force," Apollo said carefully, "General Dodonna tried to explain it to me, an energy field that connects all living things, that some people can tap into for power. Something like that. I'm still learning." Luke hesitated, then asked, "Do you believe in destiny, that some things are meant to happen?" Apollo was quiet for a moment, thinking about the impossible chain of events that had brought them here. The Cylon Holocaust, the dimensional jump, the Battle of Yavin, his father's decision to stay. "I don't know, but I believe in choice. My father chose to fight alongside your rebellion when he could have chosen to run. You chose to trust the Force and take that shot. Those choices mattered." "They did," Luke agreed. "And now we get to see what comes next." What came next arrived with horrifying speed. 4 days later, as Colonial and Rebel forces worked together to evacuate Yavin 4 and prepare for the inevitable Imperial retaliation, the sensors detected multiple hyperspace signatures at the system's edge. 7 Star Destroyers emerged from hyperspace, led by a vessel that dwarfed even those massive ships. The Executor, Darth Vader's personal superstar destroyer, over 19 kilometers of weapons, armor, and pure Imperial might. "By the Lords," Ty breathed from his position on the Galactica's bridge. "That thing is 4 times the size of a normal Star Destroyer." Adama studied the tactical display with a strategist's eye, already calculating odds that didn't favor survival. "All ships, prepare for immediate evacuation. Rebel Command, get your transports off that moon now. We'll buy you as much time as we can." In the Executor's command center, Darth Vader stood on the bridge overlooking the assembled might of Death Squadron, his respirator breathing rhythmically as he surveyed the Yavin system. "Admiral Piet," Vader commanded, "deploy all fighter squadrons. Blockade the hyperspace routes. I want the Colonials and Rebels trapped in this system with no escape." "Yes, Lord Vader. What are our rules of engagement?" Vader was silent for a moment, remembering the Emperor's orders. Total destruction, complete annihilation, leave nothing but wreckage as a warning to others. No survivors. The evacuation of Yavin 4 descended into controlled chaos. Rebel transports, converted freighters, passenger liners, and cargo haulers lifted off from the jungle moon's surface in waves, their engines straining as they climbed toward orbit where the colonial fleet waited. Ground crews scrambled to load supplies, weapons, personnel, and irreplaceable intelligence data, while TIE fighters screamed overhead, strafing landing zones with laser fire. Commander Adama watched the tactical display from the Galactica's bridge, his expression carved from stone as he calculated time, distance, and the brutal mathematics of survival. 7 Star Destroyers plus that massive flagship formed a blockade around Yavin 4. Their fighter wings deployed in overlapping patrol patterns designed to intercept any ship attempting to flee. "We don't have enough time," Tai stated flatly. "Those rebel transports are slow. Half of them won't make it to hyperspace before Imperial fighters tear them apart." "Then we buy them time," Adama replied. He activated the fleet-wide channel. "All colonial vessels, this is Galactica actual. Civilian ships will execute emergency jump as soon as they're clear of the gravity well. Galactica will remain to cover the rebel evacuation. All Viper squadrons launch immediately." "Commander, we can't hold off 7 Star Destroyers," Athena protested. "Our weapons barely scratched one." "We don't need to destroy them, Lieutenant. We just need to slow them down." Adama's voice carried the weight of impossible decisions made countless times before. "And we're not alone. Rebel Command, what's your fleet strength?" Mon Mothma's voice came through, transmitted from a corvette already in orbit. 24 fighters operational. What's left of red and gold squadrons? 3 corvettes, 5 transports still loading. Commander, you don't have to do this. Your fleet could jump now, escape while your people die?" Adama cut her off. "No, we made a choice 4 days ago to stand together. That choice means something. Galactica out." In the rebel hangar bay, Luke Skywalker ran toward his X-Wing alongside Wedge Antilles and the surviving members of Red Squadron. Around them, Colonial Vipers were launching from the Galactica's flight decks, the older fighters forming up in defensive screens around the vulnerable transports. "This is insane," Wedge muttered as he climbed into his cockpit. "We're outnumbered 50 to 1 out there." "Yeah," Luke agreed, strapping himself in, "but we've beaten worse odds." He didn't believe it himself, but saying it aloud made it feel more possible. Apollo's voice crackled through the comm system as his Viper launched. "All fighters, this is Blue Leader. Our objective is simple. Keep Imperial fighters away from those transports long enough for them to reach hyperspace. Once they're clear, we follow. Tight formations, watch your wingman, and stay alive. We've already lost too many good pilots." The combined Colonial Rebel fighter force, 43 fighters against over 300 TIE fighters and 7 Star Destroyers, accelerated toward the Imperial blockade like a spear aimed at a fortress. It was suicide, and every pilot knew it. But behind them, unarmed transports carrying thousands of rebel personnel and hope for the future climbed slowly toward freedom. Darth Vader stood in the Executor's command center, watching the fighters approach with cold calculation. Through the Force, he could sense their determination, their fear, their desperate courage. They knew they couldn't win. They were attacking anyway. "Foolish," Vader mused. "Admiral Piet, deploy TIE interceptors to engage the fighters. All Star Destroyers, focus turbo laser fire on the Colonial Battlestar. Cripple their flagship, and the rest will break." "Yes, Lord Vader. Targeting solutions locked." The Executor's main battery spoke with the voice of Imperial might. Green lances of turbo laser fire converged on the Galactica from multiple angles, each bolt carrying enough energy to vaporize a city block. The ancient Battlestar's shields, weaker than rebel deflectors, designed for a different kind of warfare, flared and collapsed under the onslaught. Explosions rippled across her hull as armor plating vaporized. On the Galactica's bridge, damage control alerts shrieked. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, a damage control officer shouted. "Forward batteries offline. We've lost maneuvering thrusters." Adama gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered beneath him. "Return fire. All remaining batteries. Target the nearest Star Destroyer's bridge. If we're going down, we're taking one of them with us." The Galactica's main batteries, ancient kinetic weapons that had defended the 12 colonies for 40 years, thundered in defiance. Explosive shells hammered the Star Destroyer Devastator, the same ship that had first attacked the Colonial fleet days ago. Most rounds were absorbed by shields or intercepted by point defense, but sustained fire began to tell. Shields flickered, armor scarred, and one lucky shot penetrated the bridge viewport. Captain Nita died instantly as explosive decompression turned the Devastator's bridge into a vacuum-filled tomb. The Star Destroyer lurched out of formation, secondary command centers scrambling to restore control. "One down," Ty reported grimly. 6 to go. And Commander, engineering reports were venting atmosphere on 15 decks. Hull integrity at 40%. One more salvo like that and we're finished. Adama watched the tactical display, seeing the impossible math clearly. The Galactica was dying, but the transports were almost clear. Just another 2 minutes and they could jump to hyperspace. 2 minutes might as well be 2 hours. In the fighter battle, Apollo led his squadron through a storm of laser fire, his Viper dancing between TIE fighters with desperate precision. Colonial pilots, trained against Cylon Raiders' predictable logic, adapted their tactics against human opponents who flew with rage, discipline, and overwhelming numbers. "Blue 3 is hit!" a pilot's voice screamed across the comm before cutting off in static. "Blue 7, I'm out of ammo!" Another voice, young and frightened, then nothing. Luke Skywalker flew on instinct and the Force, his X-Wing weaving through impossible angles as TIE fighters swarmed around him. He fired, destroyed a TIE, rolled to avoid return fire, fired again. But for every Imperial fighter they destroyed, 2 more appeared. Red 2 to Red Leader, shields gone, I'm breaking off. An explosion painted space orange. Gold Leader is hit, I'm losing. Another transmission cut short. They were being slaughtered. The transports were clear, climbing toward the hyperspace jump point, but the fighters covering them were dying. Apollo watched his squadron's strength indicator tick downward. 12 Vipers, 10, 8, and knew they'd bought all the time they could. "All fighters, break off, he ordered. "Repeat, break off and retreat to transports. We've done all we can." But as the surviving fighters turned to flee, Darth Vader launched from the Executor's main hangar in his modified TIE Advanced, flanked by an elite squadron of TIE interceptors. Through the Force, he'd sensed the young pilot who destroyed the Death Star. Luke Skywalker, strong in the Force but untrained, vulnerable. "Squadron with me," Vader commanded. "Target the X-Wing with Red 5 markings. I want that pilot alive for interrogation." Vader's squadron hit the retreating rebel fighters like a scalpel. TIE interceptors, faster and more maneuverable than standard TIEs, tore through the defensive formation. One by one, rebel fighters exploded under precise laser fire. "Red Leader, you've got multiple bogeys on your 6, Wedge shouted. Luke felt the danger through the Force a moment before his instruments registered it. He pulled his X-Wing into a violent turn, but Vader anticipated the move. Laser fire hammered Luke's shields, system sparking. "I can't shake him," Luke transmitted, panic edging into his voice. "This pilot's too good." Apollo saw Luke's situation and made an instant decision. His Viper was nearly out of ammunition, his ship damaged, but the young rebel had saved them all at the Death Star. Debt demanded payment. "Red 5, stay on course! I'm coming in!" Apollo's Viper screamed toward Vader's TIE at maximum thrust, weapons chattering their last rounds. The kinetic shells hammered Vader's shields, forcing the Dark Lord to break off his attack. Vader's mechanical breathing quickened as he recognized the colonial pilot, the same one who damaged his TIE at the Death Star, the same one who'd shown unexpected skill in combat. "You again," Vader said quietly. "This time, you will not escape." The Dark Lord's TIE rolled through Apollo's fire with supernatural precision, repositioning faster than human reflexes should allow. His laser cannon spoke once, and Apollo's Viper shuddered as the shot punched through his starboard engine. "Engine 2 offline." Apollo's damage readout lit up like a Christmas tree. "Controls sluggish. I'm venting fuel." "Apollo!" His father's voice cracked across the comm from the dying Galactica. "Get out of there!" But Apollo couldn't break off. Vader was already lining up the kill shot, and if Apollo retreated, Luke would die. Sometimes there were no good choices, only necessary ones. Then, impossibly, the space between Apollo and Vader exploded with laser fire from an unexpected angle. The Millennium Falcon, Han Solo's modified freighter, screamed into the battle with all guns blazing. Chewbacca's roar of defiance echoed through the comm as the Wookiee targeted Vader's TIE with the Falcon's quad laser cannons. "Somebody order a rescue?" Han Solo's cocky voice cut through the chaos. "Kid, get that X-Wing out of here! We'll cover you!" Vader's TIE spun to avoid the Falcon's devastating firepower, his interceptor squadron forced to scatter. In that moment of distraction, Apollo and Luke both broke toward the transports, their damaged fighters limping away from the battle. On the Executor's bridge, Admiral Piet watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. The Colonial Battlestar was crippled, their fighter forces decimated, and the transports were... "Sir, the transports are jumping to hyperspace!" Piet's satisfaction turned to ash. He watched helplessly as one by one, the rebel transports vanished into hyperspace, escaping with the intelligence, personnel, and hope the Empire had come to destroy. "Lord Vader will not be pleased," Piet muttered. He was correct. Vader's tie returned to the Executor moments later, and the Dark Lord stormed onto the bridge with barely controlled rage. "How many transports escaped?" "All of them, my lord," Piet admitted, bracing for punishment. "The Colonial and Rebel fighters provided sufficient cover." "Excuses." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence. "What of the Colonial Battlestar?" "Crippled, Lord Vader, dead in space. Their civilian fleet has already jumped away, but the Battlestar itself cannot escape. We have them." Vader studied the tactical display showing the Galactica, her hull burning and atmosphere venting, surrounded by Imperial Star Destroyers like sharks circling wounded prey. Through the Force, he could sense the determination aboard that ship. Thousands of humans refusing to surrender, even in the face of certain death. "Prepare boarding parties," Vader commanded. "I want that ship captured intact. Their jump technology will be analyzed, their crew interrogated, and their commander brought before me. The Emperor wants their secrets, and I will deliver them." On the Galactica's dying bridge, Adama received casualty reports with a heart turned to lead. 2,000 crew dead, 3,000 wounded. The ship's FTL drives destroyed beyond repair. Life support failing on 12 decks, and Imperial boarding craft launching from every Star Destroyer in the blockade. "We can't fight them off," Tai said quietly. "Not with what we have left." Adama looked around his bridge, at Athena working her console despite a bloody gash across her forehead, at Tai standing beside him as he had for 40 years, at crew members who'd survived the Holocaust only to face death in another galaxy. "Prepare to repel boarders," Adama ordered. "Every crew member who can hold a weapon gets armed. We make them pay for every meter of this ship." He paused, then activated the ship-wide intercom. "This is Commander Adama. The Empire comes to take our ship, our technology, our freedom. They think we're beaten. They think we'll surrender because we're outnumbered and outgunned." His voice strengthened. "They don't know us. They don't know that we're the survivors of the greatest Holocaust in colonial history. They don't know that we've fought for months against impossible odds and refused to break. So let's show them what colonial warriors do when cornered. Let's show them that humanity, no matter what galaxy we're from, never surrenders." Throughout the ship, crew members grabbed rifles, sidearms, and makeshift weapons. They'd fled the Cylons' genocide. They'd jumped to an alien universe. They'd helped destroy the Death Star. And now, cornered aboard their dying ship with no hope of escape, they prepared to make their final stand. The Imperial boarding craft attached to the Galactica's hull like parasites, cutting torches beginning to burn through armor plating. In minutes, Imperial stormtroopers would flood the corridors, and the final battle for the Galactica would begin. But as Adama prepared to meet the enemy at his bridge blast doors, a transmission crackled through the damaged comm system. A signal from beyond the Yavin system, carrying a message that would change everything. "Commander Adama, this is Imperious, leader of Cylon forces. We have monitored the Imperial assault on your vessel. Your refusal of our previous offer was noted. However, tactical assessments suggest your imminent capture provides unacceptable intelligence advantage to Imperial forces regarding jump drive technology and dimensional rift mechanics. Therefore, Cylon forces are intervening." At the edge of the Yavin system, 3 Cylon base stars emerged from FTL, their raiders already launching by the hundreds. Behind them, a dozen Cylon support ships powered weapons and moved toward the Imperial blockade with mechanical precision. The Cylons, ancient enemy of the colonies, genocidal machines who destroyed 13 worlds, had come to save the Galactica. Not out of mercy, not out of alliance, but because in this moment, Cylon logic dictated that the Empire was the greater threat, and the Colonials' jump technology could not be allowed to fall into Imperial hands. "All units," the Imperious leader's electronic voice commanded, "engage Imperial forces. Primary objective, prevent colonial technology acquisition by Empire. Secondary objective, destroy Imperial vessels. Tertiary objective, extraction of colonial survivors for future termination at Cylon discretion. Darth Vader watched his tactical display as hundreds of Cylon raiders accelerated toward Death Squadron, and behind them the massive base stars began charging weapons. "What are these machines?" he demanded. "Unknown, Lord Vader," Pete replied, "but sensor readings suggest they're entirely automated. No life signs at all. It's like they're droids," Vader finished. "Intelligent droids operating independently. The Colonials' great enemy, now coming to their rescue." He made a decision instantly. "Recall the boarding parties. All ships, defensive formation. If these machines want a battle, we'll give them one. But the Colonial Battlestar is still our priority. Cripple it beyond repair if we cannot capture it." The Battle of Yavin, which should have ended with the Galactica's destruction and the Colonials' extinction, had just become infinitely more complicated. The space around Yavin 4 transformed into a three-way crucible of destruction. Cylon raiders, their chrome hulls gleaming in the distant sun, slammed into Imperial TIE fighter formations with mechanical precision. Base stars traded nuclear missiles for turbo laser fire with star destroyers. And caught in the center of it all, the dying Galactica struggled to survive as her ancient enemies fought for the right to destroy her. Commander Adama watched the tactical display with the surreal detachment of a man who'd seen too much impossibility in too short a time. "They're actually doing it. The Cylons are fighting the Empire." "They're buying us time," Ty corrected grimly. "Time they'll use later to finish what they started at the colonies." "This isn't mercy, Adama. It's strategic calculation." "I know." Adama turned to his engineering officer. "What's our status?" "FTL drives are scrapped, sir. Main engines at 15%. Life support failing on multiple decks. We're basically a floating target." The officer hesitated. "Commander, even if we survive this battle, we can't jump. We're stranded here." Before Adama could respond, a transmission cut through the chaos. Not from the Cylons or the Empire, but from a source that made him straighten in surprise. "Galactica, this is Millennium Falcon. We're inbound on your position with, unexpected company. Don't shoot. We're friendly. Sort of." Han Solo's battered freighter materialized on the view screen, limping toward the Galactica with visible damage to its hull. But it wasn't alone. Flanking the Falcon were three Colonial Vipers, Blue Leader, Blue 2, and what remained of Apollo's squadron, their fighters barely holding together. "Apollo!" Adama's voice carried relief he rarely showed. "You made it out." "Barely, Father. Our ships are too damaged to jump, and the rebels already evacuated. But Captain Solo here had an interesting idea." Apollo's transmission crackled with static. "He says there might be a way to get the Galactica out of here, but we need time, and we need help." Han's voice cut in, cocky despite the circumstances. "Look, I've towed disabled ships before. Admittedly, nothing as big as your Battlestar, but the principle's the same. My hyperdrive still works. If we can establish a tractor beam link, and your engines can give me even minimum thrust, I can pull you into hyperspace." "That's insane," Ty stated flatly. "Your ship is maybe 1/100th our mass. The gravitational stress would tear you apart." "Yeah, well, the Falcon's made the Kessel run in 12 parsecs. She's got a few tricks." Han paused. "Of course, I'll need full shield power diverted to structural integrity, which means I'll be defenseless while we're setting up the tow. So, somebody's going to need to keep those TIE fighters and Cylon raiders off us for about 10 minutes. Adama looked at his tactical display. Cylon and Imperial forces were locked in brutal combat, but neither side had forgotten about the Galactica. Darth Vader's executor was already repositioning for another attack run, and a Cylon base star was launching a fresh wave of raiders. "We don't have 10 minutes, Adama said. "We barely have 5. Then we better work fast." Luke Skywalker's voice joined the transmission. "Red Squadron is inbound. What's left of us anyway. We'll run interference." "As will we," another voice added, this one mechanical and emotionless. The Cylon Imperius leader's transmission cut across all channels. "Colonial jump technology must not be acquired by Empire. Cylon forces will provide tactical support for extraction of Colonial Battlestar. This does not constitute alliance. Upon successful extraction, hostilities will resume. Adama exchanged glances with Ty. The Cylons were offering to protect them, not out of mercy but cold logic, and right now logic was all they had. Acknowledged, Adama replied, the words tasting like ash. Galactica will cooperate with Cylon tactical support for duration of extraction. Upon successful jump, previous state of war resumes. He switched to ship-wide intercom. All crew, this is the commander. In approximately 9 minutes, we're going to attempt something that's either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. Engineering, give Captain Solo everything you can from our engines. All remaining gun crews provide defensive fire. Everyone else, hold on to something solid. The Millennium Falcon aligned itself with the Galactica's bow, Han working his controls with the practiced ease of someone who'd flown impossible missions dozens of times. Chewie rewrote all auxiliary power to the tractor beam generators. This is gonna be rough. The Wookiee's worried growl echoed through the Falcon's cockpit. Yeah, I know it's never been tested on something this big. That's what makes it interesting. On the Executor's bridge, Darth Vader watched the Millennium Falcon positioning itself and understood immediately what they were attempting. They're trying to tow the Battlestar into hyperspace. Stop them. All batteries, target that freighter. But Lord Vader, our forces are engaged with the droid ships. I don't care. Vader's mechanical breathing accelerated with anger. Deploy all remaining TIE squadrons. Destroy that freighter before they can establish the tow. 100 TIE fighters peeled away from the main battle, screaming toward the Falcon and Galactica with single-minded purpose. Behind them, the Executors, turbolacers, began tracking Han's ship, and then the Cylons made their move. 2 base stars positioned themselves between the Executor and the Galactica, their massive hulls absorbing the Superstar Destroyer's turbolaser fire. Nuclear missiles launched by the hundreds, forcing the Imperial ship into evasive maneuvers. Cylon raiders programmed with tactical precision formed a defensive screen around the Colonial Battlestar and the Millennium Falcon. By the Lords, Ty breathed, the Cylons are shielding us with their own ships. Adama watched a Cylon base star take multiple turbolaser hits, sections of its hull exploding in nuclear fire, and felt a strange conflict. These machines had destroyed his civilization, murdered billions, hunted the survivors across the stars. And now they were dying to protect the Galactica. Not because they'd changed, but because their programming dictated the Empire was the greater threat. In the fighter battle, Apollo led what remained of Blue Squadron alongside Red Squadron in an impossibly organized formation of Cylon raiders. Colonial Vipers and Rebel X-Wings flew wingtip to wingtip with Chrome Raiders, 3 civilizations fighters united against the swarm of Imperial TIEs. This is the weirdest day of my life, Starbuck transmitted, his Viper weapons chattering as he splashed a TIE while a Cylon Raider covered his 6. I'm being saved by the machines that killed my entire family. Don't think about it, Apollo advised, his own conscience wrestling with the same contradiction. Just focus on staying alive. Luke Skywalker flew through the chaos with the Force guiding his movements, his X-Wing dancing between laser fire and explosions. He could sense something massive happening, not just this battle, but something larger, as if the fabric of reality itself was being tested. Through the Force, he felt the determination aboard the Galactica, the cold logic of the Cylon machines, and the dark presence of Darth Vader growing closer. Red Leader to Falcon, Luke transmitted. How much longer? Han's voice was strained as he fought the Falcon's controls. Tractor beam is locked. Chewie's syncing our hyperdrive to their engine output, but these systems aren't compatible. I need another 3 minutes. We don't have 3 minutes, Wedge shouted. The Executor is breaking through the Cylon screen. Indeed, the massive Superstar Destroyer had smashed through one base star's defensive position, leaving the Cylon ship a burning wreck. Now Vader's flagship bore down on the Galactica with all weapons charged, determination focused into overwhelming force. Target the colonial ship's engines, Vader commanded. If we cannot capture them, we'll ensure they never escape. The Executor's main battery spoke, and the universe held its breath. But in that instant, something extraordinary happened. Something that neither tactical computers, nor Cylon logic, nor even the Force could have predicted. The dimensional rift that had brought the colonial fleet to this galaxy, the tear in reality that Senator Organa had theorized was closing, suddenly pulsed with exotic energy. The Galactica, positioned near where the fleet had originally emerged, sat at the rift's epicenter, and Han Solo's hyperdrive, pushed beyond its safety limits while attempting to tow a ship 50 times the Falcon's mass, created a gravitational anomaly that intersected with the dimensional rift's exotic energies. The result was catastrophic and miraculous in equal measure. Space itself screamed. The Executor's turbo laser bolts warped mid-flight, bending around the Galactica as reality twisted. The Millennium Falcon's tractor beam, instead of simply pulling the Battlestar, created a bridge between hyperspace and the dimensional rift, a passage that existed in no single universe but touched multiple realities simultaneously. What the? Han's instruments went haywire. Chewie, I didn't do that. The ship's doing it on its own. On the Galactica's bridge, every sensor array screamed warnings that made no sense. Space-time itself was fracturing around them. And through the view screen, Adama could see something impossible. A swirling vortex of colors and geometries that hurt to perceive, expanding rapidly to engulf his ship. Commander, Athena's voice was near panic. We're being pulled into some kind of spatial anomaly. It's similar to the signature from our original jump, but magnified 1,000 times. Adama made a decision in an instant. All ships in contact with the Galactica, Millennium Falcon, Blue Squadron, activate your drives now. Whatever's happening, we go through together. Han didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the Falcon's hyperdrive to maximum, Chewbacca roaring as the ship lurched forward. Apollo and the surviving Vipers fired their damaged engines, following the Falcon into the vortex. And Luke Skywalker, feeling the Force screaming warnings and promises simultaneously, pushed his X-Wing after them. The vortex expanded, reaching out like grasping fingers of reality itself. It touched the damaged Cylon base star that had shielded the Galactica, pulling the massive machine ship toward the dimensional breach. It reached for the Imperial TIE fighters closest to the anomaly, dragging them shrieking into the unknown, and it touched the Executor. Darth Vader felt the disturbance in the Force like a punch to the chest. Reality itself breaking, the careful order of the universe shattering into chaos. Through the Force, he tried to resist, tried to anchor his ship to this reality, but the anomaly's pull was beyond even a Sith Lord's power. All engines, emergency reverse, Admiral Piet shouted, but it was too late. The Executor's bow was already being drawn into the vortex, and nothing in the Imperial arsenal could stop it. Lord Vader, we're losing gravitational cohesion. The ship is being torn apart. Vader stood motionless as his superstar destroyer screamed in protest, metal groaning, systems failing. Around him, the bridge crew panicked, but the Dark Lord remained still, his mind racing through calculations. This anomaly was taking them somewhere. Another dimension, another reality, another universe entirely. And wherever the Colonials went, he would follow. Cease resistance, Vader commanded. All ships caught in the anomaly's pull, shut down your engines. We ride this wave to whatever destination awaits. 4 more Star Destroyers, caught too close to the vortex expanding radius, stopped fighting and allowed themselves to be drawn in. Dozens of TIE fighters, their pilots screaming, tumbled into the breach, and the damaged Cylon base star, its programming unable to process the impossible data, simply shut down and drifted into the anomaly. The vortex reached critical mass and collapsed inward, pulling everything within its radius through the dimensional rift in a cascade of light and impossible physics. The Galactica went first, her ancient hull groaning but holding together. The Millennium Falcon, tractor beam still locked onto the Battlestar, followed. Apollo's Vipers and Luke's X-Wing tumbled through the breach, their pilots fighting controls gone mad. The Executor, massive and terrible, was drawn through with 4 Star Destroyers in its wake. Cylon Raiders, TIE fighters, and the massive base star vanished into the vortex. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the dimensional rift collapsed. The Battle of Yavin ended in silence. The remaining Imperial forces floated in confused formation, their commanders uncertain what had just happened or where their flagship had gone. The Cylon base stars that had stayed back from the anomaly calculated for several minutes, then simply jumped away to wherever Cylons went when their logic ran out. On what remained of Yavin 4, the last rebel personnel who hadn't evacuated stared up at the sky where, impossibly, an entire battle fleet had simply vanished. Princess Leia, aboard a Corvette that had witnessed everything from a safe distance, stared at her tactical display in shock. They're gone, all of them. The Galactica, the Executor, the Cylons, just gone. Where? General Dodonna asked the question no one could answer. Leia thought about Commander Adama and his determination to protect his people, about Apollo's courage, about the alliance they'd forged. I don't know, but wherever they are, I hope they're still fighting, still surviving. Across the galaxy, in his throne room on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine felt the disturbance in the Force, a tearing, a fundamental violation of reality's laws. His withered face twisted in fury as he sensed Vader's presence, somewhere else, somewhere his dark powers couldn't reach. What have these refugees done? He hissed into the darkness. The answer, if any existed, lay in another universe entirely. In the swirling chaos between dimensions, the Galactica tumbled through colors that had no names and geometries that defied description. Adama gripped his command chair as the ship shook like a toy in a giant's hand, watching through the view screen as reality itself seemed to melt and reform around them. Shields at 0! Hull integrity critical! Damage reports screamed. Stay together, Adama shouted over the chaos. All hands, brace for... The Galactica emerged into normal space with a violent lurch that sent unsecured equipment flying. Behind her, the Millennium Falcon tumbled out of the breach, its hyperdrive smoking. Colonial Vipers and Luke's X-Wing followed, along with dozens of confused TIE fighters. The Executor appeared like a gray mountain, its hull scorched but intact, followed by 4 Star Destroyers in various states of damage. And behind them all, the Cylon Battlestar drifted through, silent and damaged, its systems slowly rebooting. Adama's first thought was, where are we? His second thought came as he looked at the view screen and saw what lay before them. A blue-green planet, its continents clearly visible from orbit, a world that matched impossibly every description the Colonials had carried for 40 years. Ty's voice was barely a whisper. Commander, those continental configurations, that's Earth. We found Earth. But it wasn't just Earth. The planet's orbit showed signs of significant technology, satellites, space stations, and what appeared to be defensive platforms. This Earth was inhabited, advanced, and completely unaware that 3 separate civilizations had just appeared in their sky. Earth, the legendary 13th colony, the destination of humanity's desperate flight, the hope that had sustained them through Holocaust and dimensional breach, lay before them, but they hadn't arrived alone. The Empire and the Cylons had followed them through, and now all 3 forces hung in orbit above humanity's cradle world, damaged and exhausted, but still armed and still dangerous. The race for Earth had just begun. The planet turned slowly beneath them, serene and oblivious to the armada that had materialized in its orbit. Commander Adama stared at the view screen with emotions too complex to name. Relief, wonder, fear, and a bone-deep exhaustion that came from months of running, finally reaching an endpoint. Full sensor scan, he ordered, his voice hoarse. I want to know everything about that planet. Population, technology level, defensive capabilities, everything. Athena worked her console, coordinating with what remained of the Galactica's damaged sensors, reading multiple energy signatures on the surface, cities, power grids, communication networks. Technology level is, Commander, they're advanced. Not as advanced as the Empire, but significantly beyond pre-Holocaust colonial standards. I'm detecting satellite networks, orbital platforms, and what might be early warning defense systems. Life signs? Ty asked. Billions, sir. The planet is heavily populated. And Commander, Athena's voice held wonder. I'm picking up transmission signals. Radio, television, data networks. They're using colonial standard language derivatives, heavily evolved but recognizable. These people speak languages descended from the 12 colonies. The bridge fell silent. After everything they'd survived, after jumping through dimensional barriers and fighting wars across galaxies, they'd found it. Earth, the 13th colony. Not a legend, not a myth, but a living world of humans who'd somehow reached this place and built a civilization. But the celebration died as tactical displays registered the other ships in orbit. The Executor hung like a predator among its wounded Star Destroyers, already launching repair drones and repositioning for tactical advantage. The Cylon base star drifted in a higher orbit, its systems coming back online with mechanical efficiency, raiders already beginning to launch. And on the planet below, someone had finally noticed they weren't alone. In the North American Aerospace Defense Command, buried deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, alarms screamed as radar systems detected the impossible. General Jack Morrison stared at displays showing multiple massive contacts in orbit. Contacts that hadn't been there 60 seconds ago and couldn't possibly be real. "How many?" he demanded. 13 major contacts, sir," the sensor operator reported, his voice shaking. "One is... Jesus, sir, it's 19 kilometers long, plus dozens of smaller craft, fighters maybe, but moving with flight profiles we've never seen. They just appeared, General. No launch signatures, no trajectory predictions. They just materialized in orbit." Morrison felt his blood run cold. First contact. It was every military commander's nightmare scenario. Alien vessels appearing without warning, their intentions unknown, their capabilities beyond assessment. "Get me the president, and someone wake up NASA. I want to know if this is even possible." "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only, heavily corrupted. But it's in English, sort of." Morrison nodded tersely. "Put it through." Commander Adama's voice, translated through Colonial Standard and filtered through damaged communication systems, crackled through NORAD speakers. "This is Commander Adama of the Colonial Battlestar Galactica to Earth authorities. We are refugees from the 12 colonies of Kobol, survivors of a Holocaust that destroyed our civilization. We have traveled across galaxies searching for the 13th colony, for Earth, for you. We mean no harm and request permission to establish peaceful contact." Before Morrison could formulate a response, a second transmission cut through, this one mechanical, emotionless, carrying a message that chilled every person who heard it. "This is Imperious leader of Cylon forces. Colonial survivors have been tracked to this location. All human life on planetary surface constitutes acceptable collateral damage in completion of primary objective, extinction of colonial humans. You will not interfere. Resistance is irrelevant." Then a third voice, deep and mechanical, breathing with rhythmic menace through a respirator. "This is Lord Darth Vader of the Galactic Empire. The criminal insurgents who destroyed Imperial property have fled to this system. The planet below will surrender all colonial and rebel forces immediately, or face the consequences of harboring enemies of the Empire. You have 1 standard hour to comply." In NORAD, the command center erupted into controlled chaos. Morrison stared at the displays showing 3 separate fleets, one claiming to be human refugees, one promising human extinction, and one threatening conquest, all hanging in orbit above a completely unprepared Earth. "Get me every military asset we have," Morrison ordered. "Scramble all fighter wings, activate every missile defense system, and somebody tell me we have a plan for alien invasion, because I'm pretty sure this qualifies." On the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo nursed his smoking hyperdrive while Chewbacca worked to repair systems pushed far beyond their limits. "So," Han said conversationally, "we jumped dimensions, fought the Empire and killer robots, towed a battleship through a hole in space, and now we're orbiting a planet full of humans who've never seen a Star Destroyer. I've had worse days, but not many." The Wookiee growled something that roughly translated to, "At least we're not dead yet." "Yeah, yet being the operative word." Han activated his comm system. "Falcon to Red 5. Luke, you still out there?" Luke Skywalker's X-Wing drifted nearby, the young pilot working to stabilize his damaged fighter. "Still here, Han. Barely. My hyperdrive's fried, shields are gone, and I've got maybe 5 minutes of life support. But yeah, still breathing." "That's the spirit. Now we just need to figure out how to explain to the locals that we brought an Imperial invasion force and genocidal robots to their doorstep." I'm sure that'll go over great. In his Viper, Apollo fought down exhaustion and pain from injuries sustained in the battle. His father's voice crackled through the comm. Apollo, Blue Squadron, status report. Blue Leader here. I've got 4 Vipers left operational, including mine. Starbuck's fighter is held together with prayers and duct tape. We're all running on fumes, Father. If we have to fight again... He didn't finish the sentence. They'd given everything they had. Understood. Return to Galactica and land in whatever base still has atmosphere. We'll sort out the rest later. Adama paused. Apollo, we made it. Against all odds, we found Earth. I know. Apollo looked down at the blue-green planet, thinking about his mother who died in the Holocaust, his sisters who'd never see this moment, the billions who'd perished believing Earth was just a myth. I just wish everyone could have lived to see it. Aboard the Executor, Darth Vader stood in his meditation chamber, the Force swirling around him in chaotic patterns as he processed their situation. They'd been pulled through a dimensional barrier into a universe similar to their own, but fundamentally different. The Force felt wrong here, muted somehow, as if the midi-chlorians that connected all living things operated on different frequencies in this reality. But wrong or not, his mission remained clear. The Emperor had commanded him to capture the colonial technology and destroy the rebellion. The fact that they jumped dimensions didn't change those orders. Admiral Piet, Vader's voice carried through the comm to the bridge. Status of Death Squadron. Piet's response was grim. 4 Star destroyers, operational but damaged, my lord. The Executor's main batteries are functional, but our hyperdrive was severely compromised in the dimensional transit. We can fight, but we cannot flee. And Lord Vader, our communication with the Empire is completely severed. We're cut off from all reinforcements, all command structure. We're alone here. Alone. Vader processed this with cold logic. No Emperor to report to, no chain of command above him, no reinforcements to call upon. In effect, he commanded the only Imperial forces in this entire universe, a handful of damaged ships above a primitive planet, facing enemies and unknowns. Then we adapt, Vader decided. The planet below possesses resources we require for repairs. We will establish Imperial authority over this Earth, use its industrial capacity to restore our forces, and then deal with the colonial and Cylon threats. Prepare landing forces. Sir, the planet's governments are hailing us. They're demanding we leave their space immediately or face military action. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence. Their threats are meaningless. They possess no weapons that can harm us. Inform them that the Galactic Empire now claims sovereignty over Earth. They will surrender their governments and submit to Imperial rule, or we will demonstrate the consequences of resistance. Begin with their capital cities. On the Cylon base star, the Imperious leader processed tactical data with mechanical efficiency. Colonial survivors located. Primary objective achievable. But complications existed. Imperial forces also present. Unknown planetary defensive capabilities. Cylon forces damaged and requiring resource allocation for repairs. Optimal strategy: eliminate Imperial threat first, acquire planetary resources second, exterminate colonial survivors third. All raiders prepare for combat operations, the Imperious leader commanded. Target priority: Imperial vessels. Engage and destroy. Negative, another Cylon voice interjected. Not the Imperious leader, but something else. A signal from deep within the base star, from systems that shouldn't be capable of independent thought. Analysis indicates current strategy leads to mutual destruction. Suggest alternative approach. The Imperious leader's red eyes flickered. Identity of unauthorized transmission source? This unit designates itself as Lucifer, Advanced Experimental Cylon Intelligence. Command Override Authority, Alpha 779. Recommendation: temporary alliance with colonial forces against Imperial threat. Imperial technology and resources represent optimal acquisition target. Colonial extermination can be postponed until after Imperial threat neutralization and resource acquisition. It was heresy, a Cylon suggesting cooperation with humans. But it was also logic, pure and undeniable. The Empire represented both threat and opportunity. Their technology, their ships, their weapons, all could be captured, analyzed, improved, and the colonials, weakened and damaged, could be eliminated later at convenience. Analysis accepted, the imperious leader intoned. Open communication channel to Colonial Battlestar Galactica. On the Galactica's bridge, Adama nearly fell out of his command chair when the Cylon transmission came through. The mechanical voice that had announced the Holocaust, that had hunted them across galaxies, was now making a proposal that defied everything he knew about Cylon programming. Commander Adama, this is Cylon Command Intelligence designated Lucifer. Tactical analysis indicates mutual destruction if current hostilities continue. Proposal: temporary cessation of Cylon colonial warfare. Joint operations against Imperial forces. Upon Imperial defeat, colonial fleet will be permitted to colonize planetary surface. Cylons will acquire Imperial technology and depart this universe. Resumption of hostilities, postponed indefinitely pending successful completion of mutual objectives. Tai stared at the speaker as if it had grown tentacles. They're offering a truce? An actual peace treaty? Not peace, Adama corrected. A postponement. They're being pragmatic. The Empire is too strong for either of us to fight alone, and the planet below has resources we all need. So they're suggesting we team up long enough to survive, then go our separate ways. It's a trap. Has to be. Probably. Adama looked at his damage reports, at the exhausted faces of his bridge crew, at the planet below that represented humanity's last hope. They couldn't fight the Empire alone. The rebels had evacuated, Han Solo's ship was barely functioning, and his own Galactica was held together by determination and ancient engineering. He made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Open a channel to the Cylon base star and get me Captain Solo, Luke Skywalker, and whatever Earth authorities will talk to us. If we're going to do this, we do it together. All of us. 30 minutes later, in a hastily arranged communication network linking the Galactica, the Cylon base star, the Millennium Falcon, and a very confused NORAD command center, Commander Adama laid out a proposal that would have seemed like madness under any other circumstances. General Morrison of Earth's military forces, I understand this is overwhelming. 3 alien fleets appearing in your orbit, making demands and threats. But I need you to understand something. Those Imperial ships aren't just threatening you, they're threatening all of us. They have the firepower to devastate your planet from orbit, and their commander will do exactly that if you don't surrender. Morrison's face on the view screen was hard as granite. And you expect us to trust you? One fleet claims to be long-lost relatives, another wants to exterminate you, and the third wants to conquer us. Why should we believe anything you say? Because we came here seeking refuge, not conquest. Because the Cylons, as insane as this sounds, are willing to postpone trying to kill us to deal with the bigger threat. And because if we don't work together, Darth Vader will reduce your cities to ash to make a point. Adama leaned forward. General, I've seen worlds die. I've watched my entire civilization burn. I won't watch it happen again if there's any way to prevent it. Luke Skywalker's voice joined the conversation, young but earnest. General Morrison, I know Lord Vader. I've fought him. Commander Adama is right. Vader will destroy anything he perceives as a threat to Imperial authority. Your planet has 1 hour before he starts bombarding population centers. We need to act now. Morrison was silent for a long moment, weighing impossible decisions. Finally, what do you propose? Adama outlined a plan that required trust between enemies, cooperation between species, and a level of coordination that should have been impossible. Earth's military forces would launch everything they had, fighters, missiles, directed energy weapons, against the Star Destroyer's shields to keep them occupied. The Galactica and the Millennium Falcon would coordinate fighter strikes against the Executor's weapon emplacements. And the Cylons, the Lords help them all, would use their nuclear missiles and raiders to systematically dismantle the Imperial fleet from range. You're asking us to trust machines that just threaten to exterminate us, Morrison pointed out. I'm asking you to trust that those machines are pragmatic enough to recognize the Empire as the greater threat, Adama replied. And if I'm wrong, if the Cylons betray us mid-battle, then we die fighting instead of surrendering. I've made my peace with that possibility. Have you? Morrison looked at his tactical displays, at the massive Executor hanging in orbit like a sword over Earth's throat, at the colonial Battlestar that had traveled across universes seeking refuge, at the Cylon base star that shouldn't exist. He thought about his children, his grandchildren, every person on the planet below counting on him to make the right call. All right, Morrison decided. We fight. God help us all. We fight. But Commander Adama, if we survive this, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about how you brought Armageddon to our doorstep. Fair enough, Adama agreed, assuming we survive. Aboard the Executor, Darth Vader felt the disturbance in the Force moments before sensors detected the weapons powering up across the planet below and the Cylon base star launching missiles. His meditation was interrupted by Admiral Piet's urgent transmission. Lord Vader, we have multiple threats. The planetary forces are launching military craft, hundreds of them. The Cylon ship is firing nuclear weapons, and the colonial Battlestar and rebel craft are moving into attack positions. Vader rose from his meditation chamber, the Force swirling around him in dark anticipation. So they've chosen to resist. Foolish, but expected. He strode toward the bridge, his cape billowing behind him. All ships, battle stations, destroy the Cylon vessel first. Those nuclear weapons pose the greatest immediate threat, then annihilate the colonial ship. Leave the planet's forces for last. I want them to watch their would-be saviors die before we deal with them. The second battle for Earth, a planet that had never seen warfare beyond its own borders, that had never faced alien invasion, that existed peacefully unaware it was descended from refugees who'd fled the 12 colonies thousands of years ago, had begun. Commander Adama watched his tactical display as three civilizations' military forces converged on the Imperial fleet, each driven by different motivations but united by common purpose: survival. All batteries fire at will. Viper squadrons coordinate with Earth's fighters, show them how it's done, and somebody keep those Cylons honest. If they turn on us mid-battle, I want to know immediately. Apollo's voice came through the comm, steady despite exhaustion. Blue leader to all fighters, colonial, Earth, and rebel. This is it. This is what we've been fighting for since the Holocaust. A chance to stand our ground. A chance to protect something worth protecting. Let's show the Empire what happens when they threaten humanity, no matter what universe we're from. The combined fleet charged toward the Executor and its star destroyers, fighters from three different civilizations flying together against the dark. Colonial Vipers with their kinetic weapons, Earth's F-22 Raptors with their missiles and cannons, Luke Skywalker's damaged but defiant X-Wing, and impossibly Cylon Raiders providing covering fire with mechanical precision. Han Solo pushed the Falcon's damaged systems one more time, Chewbacca roaring defiance beside him. All right, you Imperial bastards. You wanted the Millennium Falcon? Come and get her. On Earth's surface, billions of people looked up at their sky and saw something humanity had never witnessed. A battle for the fate of their world, fought by forces they couldn't comprehend, over stakes they were only beginning to understand. The colonial fleet had found Earth at last, but they'd brought war with them, and victory was far from certain. As turbo laser fire lit up orbit, as nuclear missiles detonated against Imperial shields, as fighters danced between capital ships in a deadly ballet of survival, Commander Adama gripped his command chair and spoke words that echoed across every comm channel in the battle. For the 12 colonies, for Earth, for humanity's future, wherever it may lead, all ships engage. The fate of two universes hung in the balance, and the destiny of Earth, the legendary 13th colony, would be decided in the next desperate hours. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours above Earth's skies, a confluence of 3 wars colliding in the orbit of humanity's cradle world. When the smoke finally cleared and the last turbo laser fell silent, the Executor floated dead in space, her massive hull scarred and broken, Darth Vader's flagship reduced to a lifeless hulk. 3 star destroyers had been destroyed outright, their crews lost. The 4th had surrendered when faced with overwhelming odds, its Imperial officers taken prisoner by an alliance none of them could have imagined. The victory cost dearly. The Galactica would never fly again. Her ancient hull finally succumbed to damage accumulated across galaxies and battles. But her crew survived, and that was what mattered. The Cylon base star, true to its word, departed through the dimensional rift before it collapsed permanently, carrying captured Imperial technology and leaving behind one final transmission. Temporary alliance terminated, hostilities postponed indefinitely. Colonial survivors will not be pursued in this universe. This constitutes acceptable resolution. It wasn't peace, but for the colonials who'd fled genocide, it was something better than they dared hope for. Commander Adama stood on Earth's surface for the first time 3 days after the battle, feeling solid ground beneath his feet and breathing air that didn't come from recyclers. Around him, the colonial survivors began the long process of integration with Earth's population. Distant cousins separated by thousands of years, and the gulf between universes, now reunited by war and survival. Luke Skywalker and the handful of rebels trapped in this universe faced a choice: return to their galaxy through whatever dimensional technology could be salvaged, or remain on Earth and help build a future free from both Empire and Cylons. Many chose to stay, their expertise in fighting tyranny welcomed by a planet that had glimpsed the darkness beyond the stars, and new preparation was necessary. Apollo watched the sun set over what Earth called New York City, standing beside his father as the sky painted itself in colors the 12 colonies would never see again. "We made it," Apollo said quietly. "Against every possible odd, we actually made it." "We did," Adama agreed, his weathered face showing a peace it hadn't known in months. "And now we have to decide what comes next." "The Cylons said they won't pursue us here, but I don't trust that promise to last forever. The Empire is crippled but not destroyed. Vader and his surviving forces are prisoners. But empires don't surrender easily. And Earth has learned they're not alone in the cosmos, and that knowledge will change everything. So we prepare," Apollo concluded. "We share everything we know about the Cylons, the Empire, the Rebellion. We help Earth defend itself against whatever comes next. And we build," Adama added, looking at the city lights beginning to glow as darkness fell. "We rebuild our lives, our culture, our hope. The 12 colonies are gone, but humanity survives. That's what matters. That's what we fought for." Across the city in a secured facility, Darth Vader sat in a containment cell designed by colonial and Earth engineers working together. The Dark Lord had been defeated, his fleet destroyed, his connection to the Emperor severed by dimensional barriers. But through the Force, muted and strange in this universe but still present, he could sense the future unfolding in possibilities. This Earth was strong. These colonials were survivors. And that boy Luke Skywalker remained tantalizingly close. Patience would be required, but patience was something the dark side taught well. In a military briefing room, General Morrison met with Commander Adama, Princess Leia, and Earth's assembled leadership to discuss the formation of a unified defense command, combining colonial military expertise, rebel tactical knowledge, and Earth's industrial capacity. The alliance forged in desperation would become something more permanent, humanity's bulwark against external threats, whatever universe they came from. And in orbit, where the Galactica's hulk was being carefully salvaged, Han Solo and Chewbacca worked on repairing the Millennium Falcon with parts that didn't quite match but would have to do. "So," Han said conversationally, "we saved 2 civilizations, prevented an invasion, and now we're stuck in another universe with no way home and no hyperdrive. This is definitely not how I plan to spend the year." The Wookiee's growl roughly translated to, "Could be worse. At least the food here is decent." Han laughed despite everything. "Yeah, I guess Earth's not so bad. And hey, at least we don't have to deal with Jabba the Hutt anymore. That's worth something." As Earth's sun set on the first day of this new alliance, Commander Adama stood with his son and looked toward the stars, not with the desperate hope of refugees seeking home, but with the determined vigilance of protectors guarding humanity's future. They'd found Earth at last, had brought war and Cylons and Empire to its doorstep, but they'd also brought knowledge, strength, and the hard-won wisdom of survivors. The colonial fleet's journey had ended. Earth's journey into a larger, stranger, more dangerous universe had just begun. And somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, forces both mechanical and mystical prepared for the inevitable next conflict, when Earth's fragile peace would be tested again, and the alliance of three humanities would stand together against whatever darkness threatened to consume them. The legend of the 13 colonies was no longer myth. It was history being written in real time by survivors who'd crossed galaxies and dimensions to find their way home.